And why do we get rid of the little chapter preview in the front of books? Since when do we?
Contents?
Yes, table of thank you. Table of contents. Since when are those gone? Who decided that? I hate that choice. Bring it back, please. I like looking at it.
It's in my ebook.
It's not in this copy.
I can click any of those and it jumps to the chapter. So it probably depends on the printing and the publishing company, would be my guess. But like, I totally understand it with books that don't have a chapter title, you know?
I guess. Also bring back naming chapters. I don't know.
Man, I would hate to have to name chapters, to be honest.
Yeah, that's super fair.
But also, I love chapters that have names. I don't really pay attention to them that much, but I read them and then I move on, you know?
I prefer chapter names that are like a silly little quip about the vibe of the chapter to like something that's said later in the chapter, but also I've never had to make chapter titles, so
Robin Hobbs all seem to have like multiple meanings, you know? Like the last one was charms.
Yeah.
This one is Laurel, where we are introduced to Laurel, but it's also like an olive branch to a couple of people. Our laurels are like accomplishments, like you're giving them their laurels.
I thought a laurel was,
I don't know.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought a laurel was a thing that Olympians wore on their head.
Yeah, which is like that's why it morphed into giving them their laurels is like giving them their due. I'm pretty sure.
I don't know. Sometimes I just don't know stuff.
Well, that's not that I know that off the top of my head, but that's just like what makes sense to me. So I kind of assume that is how it was. And I've assumed that for years now. So in my mind, it's like, that's how it is.
That's fair. I think Robin Hobb makes me feel really dumb because I 90% of the time don't understand what the names of the people are supposed to like say about them. Like, I'm going to be really honest. I could use shrewd in a sentence. I could not define it for you. Verity, zero clue what verity means still. I still have not looked it up.
We looked it up when we were doing
okay, yeah, and see how it stuck? Don't remember it. It's gone. In one ear, out the other.
Shrewd is smart and calculating, particularly. Very shrewd business deals.
Yeah, that's very, I mean, like, yeah.
Calculating and intelligent.
Then
and a planner kind of implied.
Why would you name your kid Shrewd then? Like, wouldn't that be like naming your kid Slytherin? Ambitious and cunning is what I want. Like,
that's not bad things necessarily.
Well, no, but it does have like a negative connotation attached to it. Like, technically the words are negative. Okay,
does it in this world?
I don't know. They live in a society.
Shrewd just means you're smart.
Apparently.
Verity is like truth.
Right. Yeah.
Like forthcoming.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
I know what chivalry is, kind of. It's what men lack these days. You have to cut that.
Welcome back to another episode of Is Fitz Happy? I'm Luke.
And I'm Emma.
We're discussing chapter 14 this week, Laurels.
I feel like as the chapters go on, it's going to be harder for me to know which chapter it is because I'm really bad with Roman numerals. I'm pretty sure, maybe I'm making this up, but I think the last trilogy was not Roman numerals. I think it wrote out the number, but this, at least this print of my version of this
I have
book,
Roman numerals as well.
Roman numerals.
Yeah.
So
we've already seen that. For both of us, we've gotten the numbers wrong.
Yes. Well, you know what? Why are there letters there when there should be numbers?
Even though I think I'm pretty good at Roman numerals, it's not something that you read every day.
True. Also, when was the last time I was taught Roman numerals? I think I was like 5. Probably somewhere between 5 and 10, but still. Either way, this is chapter 14 for sure. XIV.
Yes. And the epigraph is talking about a certain black stone, often finely veined with white or silver threading, that was extensively used by the Elderlings in their architecture. So this unknown author, but assuming it's Tom Badgerlock in this,
Mhm.
or at least a treatise that was unsigned by Tom Badgerlock and maybe sent to Chade.
Sure.
But it's talking about this fine black stone that is used all over the Six Duchies, where one quarry is known, and that's beyond the lands of the Mountain Kingdom. Obviously, the stone quarry where the dragons were carved.
Yes.
And it also talks about how this was extensively used in everything, including the roads and the monoliths that stand at some crossroads
Yes.
that Buck now calls, or Six Duchies now call, the witness stones, because if you take a close look, you can see that even though they were defaced, maybe on purpose, maybe just by time, by the previous people who were here, that they are of the same material.
Yeah, what's really interesting to me about the witness stones at Buckkeep specifically is how little they are described to have that characteristic black stone quality, like the Rhodes and later Kelsingra is described to have. And I believe that when you take closer look, it does say that you can tell it is that, but at a glance, it's so weathered. Like something has happened to this specific stone to make it seem less like the other, less obvious like the others, which is really interesting. And we also know that there is another one of those traveling pillar stones built into Buckkeep
Yeah, in the
in the
dungeons.
dungeons, which I don't know if we ever decided if they just like
They built around it,
they
I
built
think.
around it or
Yeah.
if they broke apart the thing and then put that stone as just like a part of the wall.
Maybe, but I
Because
feel like they built around it. They used it because it was standing there already. Might as well use a standing structure for a
yeah,
foundation kind
I
of
guess
thing.
like in my mind, I picture this as sort of the best way to describe it would be like a fancy lamp post with a square on the top. And like it's never been described that way, but it also hasn't been described at all.
They have, and also you have to remember that yes, people kind of get sucked into them, but they have to be pretty wide in order for people to kind of go into them, right?
Well, I just assumed that there's like a brick at the top that you touch that has the writing on it and then you're sucked in. Like it's magic. It doesn't have to be we're talking Santa chimney logic here. Like it's Santa grows the chimney to be his size or
Okay.
shrinks down like whatever, you know.
Yeah. I was imagining giant stone rectangles with writing on all four sides,
Hmm.
top to bottom,
No, I'm picturing
or
like I said sort
symbols, I
of like
guess.
a lamp post or even that's like kind of too refined, maybe just like stacks of stone leading up to the one on top, like a road sign
Yeah.
or something. But yeah, I don't know. That's how I've always pictured it. So in my mind, it makes more sense that they broke down the little monolith and then used it as building material. But I guess if it's like you said, or it's just
They would
like,
build around it, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
guess we'll have to pay attention. There's not one in this chapter at
No.
all, but we are being reintroduced to this concept of the memory or skill stone, however you want to call it here.
Yes.
And I think it's important to remember that if you're coming in after not having read this series for a while, because I believe on their travels, they, not in this chapter or the next, they encounter and sleep in an inn that kind of befuddles Fitz's mind because it's
Yes.
also the foundation is out of that stone, built
Right.
out of that stone. So I feel like it's an important thing in the future, just not in the upcoming couple chapters.
Yeah. It's really interesting how these little epigraphs sort of either directly relate immediately to what we're talking about in the chapter or are just sort of a reminder of the world and what is
Yeah.
happening and what we know.
It's an aid to world building that also subtly foreshadows things that you might need to know. or remind you of that,
Right,
which is
because
nice.
yeah, especially if you were reading these as they were coming out, you have to wait a couple years between
Yeah.
publishings. Not everybody rereads a book before they get into the next book, so you just have to cover all
And
your bases.
and Live Ship was, being published for
Completely
6
different.
years before the last Fitz book.
Yeah,
So,
it's a good refresher.
yeah.
I like it. But I also think it's really interesting the little fun details you get that are sort of more whoever's writing this musing about what it means, like how these little crossroad monoliths are just everywhere. And it doesn't necessarily seem like it even has to be a place that was a big destination. If the Elderlings went there occasionally, they were building a pillar,
Right.
which is really interesting to think about just from the world perspective of what was going on back then, especially because then and now, not everyone would even be able to use them. So
Yeah.
kind of makes you think about the grander implications of like, why do it? Why
Mhm.
have these everywhere? But it does make for faster traveling if you can use it.
The epigraph also talks about how, due to the nature and like the qualities of the Elderling roads that they created,
Mhm.
it seems to be that a graveled or ground stone was also used in construction. So it's not just, paving stones on the
Right.
Elderling road. It's very smooth. It's like
Mhm.
a concrete of some sort, or
Yeah.
just like a melded together gravel in some
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, I don't know. It's all really interesting though, and I really like the details that we get. And it does point to the fact that there had to have been more quarries because of the large quantity used
Right.
that still is left over.
hmm So we join with Fitz waking up after his nighttime skilling and stumbling to talk about Galeton. And he wakes up in Chade's tower, kind of confused and just befuddled where he is, because even though his migraine has faded a bit, he still has a pretty bad headache. And it was just a very confusing night of being in someone's head for a while and
Yeah,
also wrenching himself away from that to talk
right.
about Galeton.
And on top of that, he's already suffering from the effects of using skill. And
Right.
that's probably multiplied after using it again to connect with Dutiful successfully. So
hmm
there's sort of a lot going on. And he does sort of have to be like, wait, why am I in Shade's bed? What's going on? And there's food. It looks like the room has been cleaned.
There's wash water waiting for him. So he's
Yes.
grateful for all those things and kind
Yes.
of makes use
And
of them.
noticeably less grumpy today and more willing to just eat, even though he's not hungry, knowing that he needs it and sort of out of that melancholic mood that he was in the night before, where he was sort of being
In the
petulant.
throes of the migraine. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And sort of, acting like a spoiled child. And now he's sort of out of that throw.
But also, he talks about it and touches on it a bit later, but the worry that he had for Dutiful is kind of thrust out of his mind. So that probably helps him a lot too. Because since sharing that dream, he's like, okay, so he's not in any physical danger right now.
Right.
We're okay. We have a little bit of time. So I think he's a little bit just more at ease with himself.
Right.
So there's a map unfurled with various things on it, and there's an upside down wine glass on a spot, and he lifts it up and he sees the spot of Galeton on there. It's on a tributary of the Buck River, northwest of Buck, and on the other side of the river from Buck Keep. I had never been there. I tried to recall what I knew of Galeton and swiftly did so. Absolutely nothing. So Emma and I were talking about where Galeton was, and we couldn't find it on any of our maps. And when I read this, I looked at the map, and even though there's different versions of the map, I think it's all fairly similar to where the wording is for certain things. My imagining, if you have your map in front of you, is that if you find Buckkeep, it's on the Buck River. And then if you follow that up, you get to Tur Lake. And in between those two words, Buck River and Tur Lake, the end of Tur Lake and the beginning of Buck, that's where I'm guessing Galeton is. Just kind
Yeah.
of like before you get to the lake, 3/4 of the way up the river ish, maybe halfway up the river, and then a little bit more north.
Yeah, I had it a little bit away from Turtle Lake in my head just
Yeah,
because,
it's a short trip for them.
yeah, it's a
It's
short
a
trip.
day trip.
And also, whenever we were in Dutiful's perspective, he notes seeing the land and Galeton, but he doesn't mention like a body of water. I think he mentions the river, but he doesn't mention
Right.
a lake. So I'm like, okay, so we're not close enough to the lake to see it,
Yeah.
but we're in that. But I would agree that it's sort of closer to Turtle Lake than it is to Buckkeep.
That would be my guess, at least. So, and Jade comes in then. He's like, you're up. Excellent. I managed to arrange an early breakfast with Lord Golden despite the absence of his serving man. He assured me that he could be ready to travel in a few hours. He's already concocted an excuse for the trip. What? I asked him, befuddled. Ha! Bird feathers, of all things. Lord Golden has a number of interesting hobbies, and his most current fascination is feathers. So again, we get a connection with the fool or beloved and birds.
Yes.
His fascination. It's a good excuse, but also I think he is very fascinated by them, especially after finding the rooster crown.
Definitely. And probably actually why he wants to go looking for feathers or has a fascination with feathers. He wants to find the feathers that fit, potentially.
Potentially, yeah.
But he is sort of going over this plan. And we do learn that Galeton is famous for game birds.
Yes, it borders on a wooded upland and has a reputation for pheasants, grouse, and whiptails. The latter have rather extravagant plumage, especially their tail feathers. So we learn that Lord Golden has already sent a runner ahead to notify Lady Brisinga to
Yes.
expect him and ask for hospitality, which Jade is like, no doubt she's going to grant because it's going to be a social coup for her because Lord Golden is the most exciting political thing we've had for 10 years here.
Right. He is so entertaining and very popular. And so, of course, somebody's going to want Lord Golden to be at their house.
Exactly.
That's a huge gain.
So Fitz is still very befuddled. He's very confused from his skilling and his headaches and everything that's been going on. It's a whirlwind for him right now.
Right.
So he's like, the fool is going to Galeton to find Dutiful? And Jade is like, yeah, and you're going with him. Are you okay?
Yeah, what's going on?
Like, yeah, I'm fine. It just seems this all happening so fast. And in his head, Fitz is like, I'm just used to ordering my own life around, and now it's all happening for me. I guess I got to get used to it. But I think it's also just an after effect. At least to me, it seems a little bit too much confusion to just be it's happening so fast kind of thing.
Yeah, it seems really strange. I also noted that it felt odd that he's like, oh, it's because I'm normally managing my own life. But he knows he's here to find the prince. Like, that's the whole goal.
Right.
Why wouldn't he then, like, he found where the prince is, but he also needs to go get the prince. That's part of the reason he was brought in. So it just is,
that's why I
agree, kind of odd.
It's just like an extra something confusing him, just like his skilling or just the migraine and waking up in a bed that you don't really remember going to, that sort of thing. Like, because we don't get any of the intervening moments of him going into the tower room, telling Jade, and then collapsing and falling asleep.
Right.
He just wakes up in his clothes that he was already going to bed in.
Right. And it does mention that he sat on the edge of the bed. That's what he remembers doing, but he doesn't remember sleeping. Mm-hmm. So even that, when he first says it before Jade comes up and he finds the map, you're thinking, okay, so he made it up the stairs and then sat in bed to catch his breath and passed out. Like, what's happening?
Right.
We really don't know. We're as confused as Fitz. And I think it is really... I think you could attribute it to sort of that after effect of migraine. And I know I get all fuzzy headed whenever I have migraines. So, but usually it's before and during, not after, but whatever. To each their own. Everybody's different.
Nobody has had a magical migraine.
True.
Really. So.
Maybe that's the magic part. It makes you befuddled after.
So Fitz is kind of ordering that in his mind, just saying like, okay, I'm used to dictating my own pace of things. I'll just have to get used to it for now. And then he focuses on the task at hand, then knowing that he's going to go along with this. Does Lady Brisinga have a daughter? Jade considered. No, only the son, Civil. I believe she fostered a girl cousin for a time. That would have been Philip Brisinga. She is, let me see, she would be nearly 13 now. She has returned home since spring. I shook my head, both in denial and in wonder. Jade had obviously refreshed his information on the Brisinga family since last night. I sensed a woman, not a child. An attractive woman. I had nearly said seductive. When I thought back to my experience of the night before, the dream became mine, and I recalled only too well how she had stirred my blood. Tantalizing, challenging. I glanced back at Shade. He was watching my face with undisguised dismay. I asked the next question. Has Dutiful expressed an interest in a woman? Might they have run away together? Ida forbid, Shade exclaimed fervently. No. He denied it almost desperately. There is no woman in Dutiful's life, not even a girl he finds attractive. We have been very careful not to allow him the opportunity to develop such a bond. Kettricken and I decided long ago that it would be for the best. More quietly, he added, She did not want to see her son torn as you were, between heart and duty. Have you never wondered how different things might have been if you had not loved Molly, if you had accepted your match with Lady Celerity? I have, but I will never regret loving Molly. So, Chade is very now scared with the realization of like, okay, they could have political means, and that's something I
Right.
understand. This maybe witted scheme to have political influence and help out their cause. But if they've matched him not just with a partner, but with a woman as well, that throws a wrench in all of the alliance plans
Right.
and the future of the kingdom at stake. So please, Ida forbid, have it not be so.
Right. That's pretty much worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Well, mine is dying, but like they know he's not dead. So worst case scenario for him being alive and being manipulated is there's a woman involved. And I think it's really interesting to see the ripples of what happened to Fitz and
Yeah.
how that affects other people, including his son that he doesn't, and nobody knows for sure is his son.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really interesting then also to think about maybe that choice is why Dutiful is closed off enough to be able to be targeted in this way and so willing to make a companion with a wit partner. You know what I mean? Like it's the loneliness
Yeah.
that made him more susceptible to this plot in the beginning. And that loneliness stems from his mother making a decision not to allow a bond to grow, which I'm sure internalized in Dutiful to not get too close to anyone. And there's the added fact that he's the only heir to the throne.
Right.
And that makes things difficult friend-wise anyway. But I think especially the added pressure of, I don't want you to be around any girls because you can't have a crush, which is like such a fundamental childhood experience. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, and it stems from Kettricken seeing Fitz love Molly and have a daughter and be like, no, you can't have my daughter. And I don't know.
Yeah, it's
A lot of this makes me not love Kettricken as a person, but appreciate her as the royal.
okay.
She's a great character and I love her so much, but she is not someone who has any empathy for someone's like development as a human if they are going to be a servant of all.
Okay.
If you are part of the royal family, you don't get to have any autonomy, basically.
Yeah. Which is kind of weird because I know
It just seems like she takes the wrong lessons from what Fitz
Yeah.
went through and being like, okay, more strict. Like we can't.
Yeah. It's very older sibling messed up, so younger sibling has to like bear the consequences even though they're different people. It's
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting thinking about Kettricken in this because I didn't get the sense from the first trilogy that she was raised in a super strict way.
No, I don't think so either.
I think it's really interesting then to see how strict she becomes in the confines of Buckkeep and how much of that is because of the stress of being a foreign queen who, for the first part of your husband's rule, you were being hunted down by your brother-in-law. Like,
Who also somewhat courted you at the same time.
Yes. Like how
I
much.
think seeing Regal and his indulgences really
Mhm.
kind of affected her outlook
Also,
on things as well.
yeah. And I think it's really, I mean, it's not just Fitz's choices that are in the back of her mind, right? It's looking
Yeah.
at the royal family as a whole and everything you've seen. And she only got to see them in wartime when things were really bad. Like it wasn't, she never got to see the before Verity
Right.
or before Regal or anything else. Like she's just coming in and seeing all these bad things. And it's a different culture. And so she's trying to figure out what
Yeah.
that culture is and what to do in the confines of a culture that isn't her own while still being true to her own culture. And I feel like that is so hard to do. And I don't envy her. And so I do see those mistakes and it does make me sad, but I also understand that there is so much at play to make her make those
Right.
decisions.
Yeah. Because like
Yeah.
the same thing that you said, I didn't really see. And maybe this is something that Robin Hobb evolved over time about the
Mhm.
Mountain Kingdom culture, but I didn't see that incredible discipline kind of built
Right.
into them in the first book either. However, Robin Hobb keeps bringing it up as like, oh, it's, Kettricken's mountain discipline that keeps everything so sparse and
Right.
clean. So that could be something that was kind of developed over time and she decided to include in that culture. But Kettricken coming from a society that everything that she stands for is baked into their culture and their
Yeah.
interactions to the Six Duchies, who is there's a lot more options for how to live
Right.
because it's a easier climb than the mountains.
Yes.
So nothing is so structured as in society. So maybe she sees it as undisciplined because
Yeah. Well,
everyone kind of worked towards one goal to an
right.
extent. In the
Right.
Mountain Kingdoms, they were very independent, as we know. Each of like the family groupings didn't really like live in one city. They kind of
Yeah.
traveled if they wanted. But coming to the Six Duchies and seeing how different people lived their lives and made mistakes, she's like, okay, my way actually is the best, and we have to be even more disciplined than I was
Right.
to keep the kingdom on the
Yeah.
right track.
Keep everybody together.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's true too, right? Like she comes from a society that's more nomadic, that is a harsher life where there isn't, even though people are individuals, there isn't the ability to faction off and still prosper. You
Right.
need to be part of a whole group. There needs to be somebody willing to be the sacrifice to make the whole of the group better.
I just keep thinking of like the one example from the Mountain Kingdoms is that like some of the elderly people who do not want to be a burden on their families anymore just walk off into the wilderness to die alone.
Yeah.
So
So
like
like
it is a harsher environment.
yeah. And so I think that is a huge difference then. And maybe it's felt more lax for her in her hometown to a reader because everybody, like you said, the society is geared towards
Yeah.
being that way. Like there's no way that you can go to Buckkeep and it'll be the same as Tillith or Pharaoh or
Right.
any other duchy. Like they're all mini kingdoms held together by the royal family, but it's so different and they don't necessarily need the royal family to survive. So
Mhm.
there is that sort of ability to separate if they don't like what's going on.
So I really see Kettricken's reaction to all of that in these little things that Shade says. And it makes me uh, I hate to say this, but it makes me not like her
Yeah.
as much as a person because she's making these decisions. They're totally understandable decisions and they are good for the kingdom,
Right.
just not good for the individual,
Right.
including Dutiful and her saying like, oh, maybe I pushed him too much or whatever. I really think it was Chade and Kettricken bringing up Dutiful that pushed him into being so lonely
Right.
and making this decision and running away. Yeah, it's a really interesting and deep reason for bringing for like the next plot point here
Yeah.
because it all stems from that first 3 books.
Yeah. So I don't know. I kind of like it. I like seeing it. But like you said, I think it makes it it's easier to be like, oh, Kettricken, what are you doing?
Yeah, because
But-
I mean,
But
this is one thing that this reread is doing to me, right? Because we talked about
yes, yeah.
Beloved's flaws before, and
Yeah.
how first time through, maybe second time through, even you're like, Beloved is the perfect character. Fitz is so stupid. Like, why don't you? Everything about Beloved is
Right.
right. Just listen to Beloved. Stop being so dumb, Fitz. These deep rereads make you go like, well, Beloved is biased.
Yeah.
Beloved lies. Beloved is, hypocritical at times and jealous and all of these things.
Right.
And not, omniscient
Yes.
or omnipotent. And it's making me do the same thing with Kettricken. I already
Yeah.
had that with Fitz and Chade because they're kind of the obvious choices of like,
Yeah.
you can see good and bad in both of them. There's good and bad in Night Eyes too. I don't want to see it.
No,
I
there's
refuse
only
to
good
see
in
it.
Night Eyes.
But it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, as a long tangent about one little line that Chade mentioned here, but yeah, they don't allow Dutiful to bond
Right.
with any girl.
And this gets into interesting territory because with that, Chade brings in, like, what if you'd never loved Molly? And Fitz gets really defensive of that.
And Chade immediately recognizes him. Is like, okay,
And just is
let's
like,
not talk
we'll
about
talk about something else. I'll change the subject. But it is kind of true, right? Like, if Fitz had just given up Molly and gone with Lady Celerity, who he did like as a person, like they got along.
Yeah,
they
they would've
didn't
been
love
friends.
each other, but it's a political marriage with high-ranking nobles. Like that's kind of the best you can hope for is you get along. That can grow into love later. So I think it is really interesting to think like, hey, Fitz, like this one choice you made really is coming to bite everybody in the butt now, 10, 15 years on. But they continue to talk, and
Yeah.
Fitz has to redirect to say, there may not have been a woman or girl that you know of, but there is one now.
There may be now, like especially. Yeah.
I felt something, and Fitz points out that a lot of the allure he felt from Dutiful's point of view was because this woman is shrouded in mystery. So that
Right.
does point to not really knowing her well. And we as rereaders know it's because she's not alive and does not have a physical body.
Yeah.
But I don't think Dutiful knows that, and
No.
neither does anybody else at this point. So.
Yeah. And so Chade's like, well, we'll just hope it's youthful infatuation and it can be terminated, and then winces at his own choice of words.
Right. Like, well, we don't want to kill somebody, but maybe.
The boy is already promised. Don't look at me like that, Fitz. Obediently, I looked away. I do not think he has known her long. Part of her allure was her mystery. Then we must endeavor to recover him swiftly, with little damage done. The next question was my own, asked for me. What if he does not wish to be recovered? I asked in a low voice. Chade was silent for a moment. Then he said heartily, You must do as you think best. My shock must have been apparent on my face, for he laughed aloud. For there is little use in my pretending that you will do otherwise, is there? He drew a breath and sighed it out. Fitz, I ask only this. Think in large terms. A boy's heart is a precious thing, as is a man's life. But the well-being of all the people of the Six Duchies and the Out Islands is even more precious. So do what you think best, but be sure you truly have given it thought. I can't believe you're allowing me that much leeway, I exclaimed. Can't you? Well, perhaps I know you better than you think I do. Perhaps, I conceded, but I wondered if he knew me as well as he thought he did. And this is an interesting question because this is Fitz thinking like, if I ran away with this kind of allure, I wouldn't want to come back.
Yeah.
Like this is something that I wanted to do.
Yeah, he's like living out my fantasy.
Right.
I don't know if I can get him back. And I think it's really interesting here, especially because of the conversation the night before about Chade being so hurt that Fitz doesn't realize that Chade does love Fitz and
Right.
cares about him. I think seeing here this sort of over the top, of course, I know what you're going to do and I trust you and you're going to do whatever you want to do anyway. So I'm giving you the permission out loud. Do what you think is best.
He's
But
like
also
making an effort to trust him and
Yeah.
like show that
Yeah,
physically, just like, hey.
exactly. Like, hey, this is me showing you how much I care about you and your
Yeah.
opinions. Do what you think is best, but also please think it through. Like,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
don't just think in the moment of, oh, this poor young boy, I relate to him. Think about what it means overall and really think and then make your choice.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think this is Chade's way of sort of trying to fix the past mistakes of
Yeah.
being too closed off with his love, I guess. That this is his attempt of seeing like,
Yeah.
see, I trust you, I love you, you are my boy.
It's a good way to look at it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fitz's thoughts on this is really interesting to me too, because when Dutiful is recovered, isn't Dutiful before Dutiful like guesses who Fitz is, he's very like, you wouldn't understand and all this
Yeah.
stuff. And we have Fitz being like in his head, yeah, I do, but I can't say it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very, you wouldn't get me, Dad. Like, it's not a phase, it's a lifestyle. Fitz is like, I have the same posters in my room. Let's just get through it. Like,
Yeah. So Chade's like, well, you just arrived just a few days ago, but you know, I have to send you off again. Think you can be ready to leave in an hour or so? And Fitz is like, yeah, but I have to go down to Buckkeep Town and leave a message for Hap with Jinnah because I'm going to run out before he comes back.
right.
And Chade's like, I can take care of that. And Fitz is like, no. I have to be Tom Badgerlock. I have to do it in person because why would I send a message down? But also,
Yeah.
Fitz really wants to see Jinnah.
Yeah, it's more of its excuse. I'm sure there could be a reason why Tom Badgerlock would have a message sent.
Chade also says, wait a minute then, I'll prepare a note for Master Gindast so he can apprentice with him. You know, all we can offer the boy is a chance to prove himself. I can't force the man to keep him on if Hap is clumsy or lazy. At my outraged look, Chade grinned, but I am sure he is not. Just allow me a moment to compose my note for Hap to carry.
Which is, I think good of Chade to cover bases, to say, all I can do is get him in the door.
Mm-hmm.
I can Nepo baby him in the door. He's got to talent his way out. Like,
Yes, exactly. Or at least hard work his way out.
yeah, like there's no keeping him if he's not good. I'm sorry. Which is really funny. And to be fair, Chade has not met Hap. Well, no, he has probably seen Hap at the celebration
Yeah.
when he was with Starling, but
I think he
hasn't-
did because he mentioned, like, I knew it was your boy because he had the same mannerisms as you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's like met Hap, but he doesn't know Hap is a worker. And
Yeah.
but I think he was just trying to rib Fitz a little bit.
Ribbon, but also it's a good warning too. It's
Yeah.
just like a
Like, hey,
just
also all parents think their kids are the best and are amazing
Right.
at everything. So it's like just a warning in case he's not as great as you think.
So it takes a while for that note to get written, and Fitz finds himself hurrying down to Lord Golden's rooms. Lord Golden, of course, clucks over him in his slept-in clothes, and he informs Tom Badgerlock that we would travel alone and swiftly. Lord Golden had already established a reputation for both eccentricity and adventurousness. No one would look askance at this expedition. He also told me that he had himself selected a horse for me and was having her freshly shod. I could pick her up from a smithy. He assumed I would wish to select my own tack and gave me a letter of credit for that as well before sending me on my way. Fitz mentions that at no time during that did they ever switch from Lord Golden and his manservant Tom Badgerlock, so they both understood that they have to assume those roles because they're going out into public alone. It's
Right.
going to be tested. They have to be those personas all the time.
Right. There's much more at risk now, and they can't fall into their old habits. And so it is good practice, especially when they're alone. And if they make a mistake now, nobody notices, to continue. And there's also the fear that somebody might overhear, even though the door's locked, it's just them.
Yes. So he goes to Scranton's the tailor, and Fitz is kind of brusque with him and says he's in a hurry. He refuses the final fitting, and the tailor's just like, fine, take the bundle of clothes.
Yeah, it's really interesting because honestly, Fitz probably wouldn't have wanted to do that anyway.
No.
So he's a little bit using the
Goodness, no.
excuse of needing to haste at Lord Golden's order.
Well, Hobb also then gets the fun reaction of Fitz opening it up later on and being like, these are my clothes?
Yes, because he does not even check. He just takes the bundle. He's like, yep, great, perfect. Like, take your money. I
I'm
don't
already
care.
packed. We're
Yeah.
good.
Who cares?
So then he goes to Jinna's shop, and he's met with disappointment because Jinna has been out for at least a day, going into the hills, picking some ingredients and mushrooms and things like that,
Exactly.
foraging.
Yeah. So he is there with her niece
Yes.
and
Miskia.
Miskia and the cat Fennel. And
Who says, you love me, you know you do, pick me up. And there is no sense in disobeying, so he
Yes.
picks her up.
It's so funny because, last time we met, Fennel was so like anti-Fitz, and now Fitz is back and Fennel's like, all right, love me. Hello. But we do get this little cute scene where Fitz is sort of telling Mitsia that he has to go and that he needs to have Hap stay here maybe longer, and he feels bad because there's a pony in a cart and a dog and a boy, and he'll pay for anything afterwards. He doesn't have any money right now, but he swears he's good for it. Don't worry, any coin you have to spend on my son's expense, I will pay. And after the third time of him doing that, he gets told that he should rest comfortable. Your son will be in good hands and welcome here, pay or not. I doubt you asked coin of my aunt when you welcomed her to your home.
And he realizes he's been clucking like a mother hen.
Yes, he's been worried about his boy.
Yes.
And I think part of that, he does talk about how part of that is because he's so rushed and he is kind of nervous about the journey because of what it entails, but also he's leaving all of this to someone else. Like, it's his duty, his responsibility to take care of Hap, and now he's leaving that to somebody else, and it feels bad.
It's another manifestation of what he said before waking up and talking to Chade. It's somebody else being a part of his life and his plans. It's not just him for the past 15 years dictating what he was doing and when he had to get it done. It's now left in someone else's hands. He has to trust someone.
Yeah. And there is a level of trust when you're allowing your child to be taken care of by somebody.
Right.
But I thought it was really cute that Miskia was kind of like, hey, we're friends. Like, it's fine. Like, I mean, you're friends with my aunt. It's fine. You didn't ask her for money when she stayed.
Yeah.
We're not going to ask your kid for money. It's fine. We will take care of him. And so it is really interesting to see him have to use trust. It's sad that that the worry stems from the fact that he feels that everything is a transaction, that you have to, there is give and take always when it's for him or somebody he loves. But it is good to see him able to walk away and trust that they will take care of Hap, right? Like, ultimately,
even if he says like awkward goodbye and thanks, and it's like, okay.
And he doesn't feel good about it, but like exposure therapy, he's got to get over it.
Right. I rigorously denied my disappointment at not seeing Jinna again before I left. The single kiss she had given me hung waiting like a conversation unconcluded, but I refused to contemplate it where it might lead. As complicated as things were, adding another tangle to my life was the last thing I should consider. Yet, I had looked forward to seeing her again, and being denied that dimmed my excitement at the journey. For I was excited to be on my way. The guilt that I felt at leaving Hap's welfare to someone else was an odd reflection of how freed I felt by this undertaking. In a short time, the fool and I would ride off together into El knew what, with only ourselves to look after. It promised to be a pleasant ride in fair weather with a good companion. There was more of a holiday to it than errand. My fears for Prince Dutiful had been largely laid to rest by last night's dream. The boy had been in no physical danger. Intoxicated with the night and the woman he pursued, the only danger was to his young heart, and no one could shield him from that. Truth to tell, I did not see my task as particularly difficult. We knew where to look for the lad, and with or without my wolf, I had always been a good tracker. If Lord Golden and I did not immediately flush the young prince from Galekeep, then I would track him down in the surrounding hills. Doubtless we would not be gone long. With that reassuring thought, I salved my conscience and went on to the smithy. So he's basically, I'm not that disappointed by not seeing Jinna.
Yeah.
But also, I am excited to go on this journey because it'll be a nice couple days of just me and my friend again.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I almost feel like Fitz has to make excuses for being happy with the life he threw away. right? Like
Yeah,
here we
it's
see,
sunk cost fallacy, you know? He's just
yeah,
like, and I think later on he's like, oh, I'd be disappointed to finish this and go back to my cabin
yeah,
because I kind of like it here, but you know, didn't I not like Buckkeep for a reason?
yeah. I think it's hard because there are sort of the rose tinted glasses, right? Like he's going back into his old life and he's getting some of the best bits. Some of
Yeah,
it's very different, but
right.
there is right now the best bits. He's not a child and he's not being forced to murder people. So, and he does have a lot more freedom now than he did then. Like, there is no doubt about that. Even though he is still being told what to do, there's still a lot of freedom under those orders. I guess he does have to pretend to be a servant, but that's kind of his own fault for not coming back sooner, you
And the
know?
task isn't, you know, life threatening anymore. It's
No,
just a day's ride out, find the boy, and a day's ride back. You know,
exactly.
it's not anything crazy.
Exactly. So I think it's really interesting to see him sort of struggle to accept that he likes having things to do that is in line with what the Farseer throne wants and likes sort of being a tool for them because for so long he was so against it. And even though there's sort of that stress, like he says, of giving his child's care up, it's sort of freeing that he doesn't have to
Yeah.
be worrying about Hap in this moment. He can just do what he's supposed to do. And that's hang out with his friend, go camping with his friend, basically. But it is also sort of a naive look at how easy this is going to be, which I think he does come to realize. But he is sort of like, I mean, hey, we know where he is. How hard could it be? As though there's not any other dangers that could pop up or
Right.
anything else that could happen between now and when he gets there. It's interesting to see this sort of laissez-faire attitude from Fitz,
Mhm.
who is notoriously a worrier. So this chapter is kind of a weird one for me from Fitz's point of view because he's so all over the place. But I do think it
I think that's
matches.
the benefit. Yeah, it
Yeah.
matches kind of what's happening. It's just
Yeah.
so rushed, but the writing is also like it's Robin Hobb's typical descriptions and
Yeah.
stuff, but the meat of every scene is one paragraph and then it moves on to the next and it's a different scene.
Yeah.
So everything is so shorter, so much shorter and truncated that it feels rushed as well compared to
Yeah.
the rest of her writing. So it kind of moves it along, and only in 3 pages you're through 3 different stores, which would usually take 2 chapters.
Yeah. So I think it's really well done in that way that
Yeah.
we also get that feeling of like, wow, things are moving really quickly and everything's changing, and also Fitz is changing his mind a little bit but not totally. And I don't know, I really like it. I like the feeling that you get from reading this
Mhm.
chapter.
So he heads to the smith's next, the smithy, and tells the girl who's outside, like, I'm here to pick up a horse. And he waits, and eventually the girl comes back with this horse, and he's wondering while he's waiting if it's going to be even a good horse at all, because he's expecting the fool's sense of humor to come out and have a really bad horse or like
Yeah,
a really
I
old
mean,
one or something.
I felt like he was worried. I feel like Fool doesn't know that much about horses as far as we are aware. And maybe
He did
he
select Malta, but he
but
did say that he went off of, you know, what the horse seller was saying, basically.
yeah, so I don't know
I
that
don't know.
that's really Fitz or
Yeah.
Fool's sort of forte is knowing animals, but I think it's more like, is this going to be like the ugliest horse I've ever seen?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
it's going to like have pink fur somehow. Like, I don't know. I feel like Fool would think that was funny, but instead it's a dark horse that looks powerful.
Yeah, a rangy black mare. And regarding Fitz with the same wary gaze that he was sending her way, and he quested lightly toward her. She snorted and would not look at me, refusing the contact. She had no interest in being friends with a human. The smith comes out and informs him she was a nasty bit to shoe, no manners about lifting her feet for a man to handle, and she'll kick if she gets the chance, so mind that. Tried to take a nip out of my girl, too, but it was only while we were shoeing her. The rest of the time, she minded her manners well enough. Thanked him for the warnings, handed the purse over, and asks if she has a name. And the smith's like, not that I know of, so name her what you want.
Yeah. I love Robin Hobb's way of making animals have these like personalities
Yeah.
because I think that's true to real life.
It is,
Like
definitely.
animals do have personalities.
Yeah.
And so it's really funny to have this little scene where a Smithy is like, man, she's rude. Like she has no manners.
Unless you're not touching her, then she's
fine. But like if you're doing your job, she is not good at getting her shoes on, which I don't know, just is a little bit silly. But I love that little touch because that's true, right? And if you're somebody like a Smithy who is putting shoes on horses all the time, you're going to note the personality of the horses you're working with. So I just love those little details so much.
I set the issue of her name aside. Her worn halter went with her, and by that I led her to the saddler. I purchased plain, serviceable tack, and despite my best bargaining efforts, I was still outraged at what they charged for it. The man's expression plainly said he thought me unreasonable. As I went outside with the tack I had selected, I wondered if I truly were. I had never had to purchase tack before. Perhaps Burrick's obsession with repairing tack had been founded on how much that stuff cost. The mare had been restive as I tried several saddles on her, and when I tried to mount her, danced sideways. Once I was up, she answered to the reins in my knees, but sloppily. I scowled at that, but schooled myself to patience with her. Perhaps after we had taken one another's measure, she would serve me better. And if she did not, well, patience was required to unteach any horse's bad habits. I had best accustom myself to that now. As I rode her carefully up the steep streets of Buckkeep Town, I reflected that perhaps I had been far more spoiled in my youth than I had ever known. Excellent horses, good tack, fine weapons, decent clothing, plentiful food. I had taken so much for granted. And this is kind of what we were talking about before.
Yeah.
And something that Fitz is kind of coming to realize, like, oh, it is expensive if you want all the stuff that I had.
Yeah. I think this is something that's odd to me because Fitz has been in the world on his own for 10 years now. And I understand that, especially, or I guess 15. Yeah, he's been gone for 15 years now. I understand that for at least like 10-ish of those years, he was in his little hut in a small town. And obviously in smaller towns, things are cheaper. And
you barter mostly.
You
don't
barter.
Use coins.
Yeah. So like I get that there's that. But didn't we have a scene when the first trilogy, Fitz is working? I don't even remember the name of the town, but he's like trying to find work in that little town. And as like a field hand or something, and he's aghast at how little they pay and how much like a room in an inn is.
Oh, was that like the third one when he's like the shepherd and kind of like trying to find Verity or something?
Yes, I think it's on his way to Verity. It's before he finds Starling.
Okay.
And before Kettle, but he like goes to buy stuff and is like aghast at how much it takes to buy things. And like I remember we had a whole conversation about how
what the money was.
Yeah, what what is up with the currency? It doesn't make sense to me. So I'm just sitting here thinking, like, hasn't he already experienced that he was privileged? Like, it feels like a weird revelation to have at 35 when you've spent 15 years on your own.
Yeah, but you haven't had to deal, especially with tack. Like, he had a pony, but he never really had a horse. And he was around horses all the time. So it's kind of a notion of like, okay, you have it, you repair it, and it's done. You know, this is his first time buying it.
I guess
it's going to be a lot more expensive than he thought. And I don't know. That specifically, this line of thinking and the whole attitude so far of his of like not understanding what he had is kind of odd. Or just taking it for granted, you know?
Yeah.
You can understand it at one point, but you can look at it and be like, oh yeah, I had a lot of cool stuff when I was a kid, and then move away and move on from that thought. It's another thing to look into it and compare yourself to other kids and be like, wow, I had it so much better than these people, because it cost a fortune to keep me fed with the best training and the weapons and stuff. It's a different look at those two things.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I just found it really interesting and true because he has sort of always taken it for granted. And I think I don't know that I talked about it whenever we were reading the first trilogy at all, if at length, but I have always found it odd how Fitz truly believed that he was getting nothing out of his deal of being an assassin. And maybe that's because I'm a grown up reading the book, but it is sort of interesting to see him in the first trilogy, even just sort of act like he gets absolutely nothing. And don't get me wrong, I don't think he should have had to be an assassin to earn his keep. It's really interesting to see a kid get fed and clothed and trained and have all this stuff and then be like, I don't get anything. They hate me.
The ungrateful kids these days.
They don't know how good they have it.
Well, because training and stuff is the boring stuff. Just let me run around.
He had all the paper he wanted. Like, was constantly writing and stuff. He
had glass in his windows, maybe.
Maybe. Probably not. I don't think Buckkeep at all has glass, right?
I think they have some, but it's not common.
Yeah. Because they're the barbarians, according to the
Bingtown?
Yes,
yeah, but
Bingtown.
That's they're talking about like people in houses don't have glass in their windows.
But he has to board up his windows for winter, which would imply he does not have glass.
Maybe. In Buckkeep he had to?
Yeah.
He had to do it himself?
Well, he didn't do it. He had his servants do it, but I'm saying
because he's privileged.
Yes. Well, either way, he at least recognizes now how good he did have it. And he's realizing that, like, wow, maybe there were a lot of things that I took for granted just because it was always there and there was nothing to compare it to.
A horse? I could teach a horse whatever it needs learning. Why do you need a horse? Night Eyes had slipped into my mind so easily I'd scarce been aware of him sharing my thoughts. I have to go somewhere, with the scentless one. Must it be on horseback? He didn't allow me time to reply. I sensed his annoyance. Wait for me. I'm nearly there. Night Eyes, no, don't come to me. Stay with the boy. I'll be back soon enough. But he was gone, and my own thought was left hanging unanswered. I quested toward him, but found only fog. He wouldn't argue with me. He simply wouldn't hear me telling him to stay with Hap. And then that's it from Night Eyes for a little bit, and Fitz rides into Buckkeep through the gate. He frowns at that because the guards don't really stop him because they don't even glance at him. So he's like, I need to talk to Chade. Just because I'm wearing blue doesn't mean they can let anybody in.
Yeah, it's so funny. He is so funny about little things like that where it's like, oh, the state of this place. I need to talk to management. And also, like, it's better for him that he doesn't have to be scrutinized every time he goes through the gates, but whatever.
And he goes to the stables to drop off his horse for a bit. And he hears a voice from the past. Hans, my boyhood friend and now the stable master at Buckkeep, was just inside the open doors. So Fitz is hearing this voice and being like, wow, that takes me back. But also, I cannot have him see me. I'm not inhabiting Tom Badgerlock just yet. He might recognize me. I'm scared of that. So he asks a stable boy,
yes,
hey, take my horse. This is for Lord Golden. And the boy's like, yeah, he left instructions. You need to go up and see him and help pack.
Yes.
So Fitz is glad to get that out of the way.
Right. And I mean, there's also the fact he talks about how Hans was the only person to recognize him back in the first trilogy when he was trying to escape from the castle. He was at Withy Woods.
First. Yeah, he was at Withy Woods. Yeah, he had seen him and called for guards.
Yes.
When Fitz was trying to escape after trying to assassinate Regal.
Yes. So he wasn't sure if Hans recognized him as himself or thought he was like a ghost/demon, but whatever it was, Hans did recognize him at one point, which granted was right after they had been friends. Like it was time had passed.
Right.
But still there's the chance that he would once again recognize him. If he could do it then, he can do it now. Mm-hmm. And as he's walking away from the stables, getting the instructions to go to Lord Golden, Hans does pass by him and doesn't even look Fitz's way. But Fitz notes that he's gotten older, he's gotten wider, but so had Fitz. And it's really interesting to see someone you used to know really well as a grown-up. But then he thinks that it's better for him to only see Tom Badgerlock in his peripherals and then maybe he'll see Fitz a few more times.
Yeah, catch
Far
glimpses
away.
of him and establish Tom Badgerlock as someone separate.
Yes. And so that way, by the time they do meet face to face, he'll already have built up a persona in his mind that he won't be comparing him to anyone else. There's no need to think, why do you look so familiar? It's because you've seen him around. And I think that's a really interesting tactic to take, and also an interesting thing to think on, that Fitz, I mean, I think it shows that Fitz still has that training ultimately. I know I have complained a lot about how
his training, quote unquote,
his assassin training that he seems to have forgotten most of. He is still competent in knowing how people work. And
you hear that?
All right, I was wrong about something.
We get some praise from Emma.
Very rare. It won't happen again, I promise.
But yeah, the hands passes him by, and Fitz is like, yeah, it's better this way for now.
Yeah. And I think that's, I mean, good of him, right? Like, he's making sure that he is taking steps to ensure that somebody that he knew well cannot recognize him.
Yeah. He enters Buckkeep, and Lord Golden says, Badgerlock, there you are, excuses himself from a gaggle of noble women. It says, we must complete our preparations. Let's go back up. So he goes to the room, kind of directing like Tom Badgerlock of how to pack all of his things. When he enters the room, it's already all packed.
Right. Lord Golden already did it all. Well, because Fool would never let Fitz touch his stuff.
Right.
But also,
I think he has to a couple times. He's like, you've messed everything up. Because
he gets
Fitz is
so
like,
mad.
I don't know how to fold this. Let me just shove it in.
Yes, Fitz is really bad at being, at doing menial tasks like that. But it's really interesting to have this moment because it is, building that play. It's keeping to Golden's character, that Lord Golden is so fussy and wants everything just so, but also in reality,
he is fussy and wants everything just so. But
so he's going to do it himself.
Yeah, exactly. So they enter the room, and Chade comes out of Fitz's room. Obviously, he was waiting for them to come back.
Yes.
And Chade says, not a moment too soon. The queen has heard of this, knows of our preparations, approves of them, wants you gone pretty much instantly. I do not think she will be completely at ease until the boy is under this roof again. Well, and neither will I. He bit his lower lip briefly and then announced, more to Lord Golden than to me. The queen has decided that huntswoman Laurel will go with you. She readies herself now. We don't need her, Lord Golden exclaimed in annoyance. The fewer who know of this business, the better. She is the queen's own huntswoman, and in her confidence in many things. Her mother's family lives less than a day's ride from Galeton. She claims to know the area well from childhood times spent there, so that may be a help to you. Besides, Kettricken is determined you will take her. Well do I know the futility of arguing with the queen when she has made up her mind to something. I recall something of that myself, Lord Golden replied, but there was much of the fool in that rueful voice. I felt a smile crook the corner of my own mouth. I, too, knew what it was to quail before the blue determination of my queen's gaze. And then he wonders about who Laurel is and what she did to win the confidence and feels a prickle of jealousy. And he's like, well, I've been gone 15 years.
Yeah.
Would I not be replaced? Come on.
Obviously,
Come on, Fitz.
she had to replace me. But...
And Lord Golden's like, fine. If it must be, it must be. Let's go.
Right. So
pack up.
I just want to point out that in this exchange, Chade does not say whether or not Laurel knows who Fitz is, and he does not say that she knows what the real goal is.
Right. Just mentions that she is in Kettricken's confidence in a lot of things.
Yes, and that she has been ordered to join.
Yeah.
So I say that because later there's conversation between Fitz and Laurel that is sort of borderline seeing how much each other knows.
Right.
And nobody says outright anything. And so I think it's really interesting because you have to keep in mind that Fitz doesn't really know how much Laurel knows and what is allowed to be told. And Laurel doesn't probably know either how much to trust this Tom Badgerlock.
Because he just showed up in court
and
has been there for 2 days, and now he's on this secret mission.
So why would the queen trust him?
Yeah.
So I think it's really interesting when you think about that. And also, just a fun little spoiler, Laurel is Lance's mother.
Yes.
This is Chade's lover. Gross.
Vigilant / Lantern Fall Star.
Yes. So I was reading this next to Luke and stopped reading to say, is this the same Laurel that is Lance's mom?
Yeah.
And Fitz, and and then he had to Google it to be sure, and I was right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be known I didn't recognize her. But
she's like 27.
Yeah, 25 to 27, Fitz thinks at this moment.
Maybe 29, because it says mid to late 20s or something.
Yeah.
He guesses. So like generously 29, and
she's been working with the queen for 7 years.
85.
Yeah. Ooh, gross. And she rejects him as a reminder that he wants to marry her, and she says no.
Yeah.
So, hey, there's that. I don't like it, but
hey, adults.
Like, they're grown-ups. They're fully grown. She's like a fully grown adult. It makes it less bad.
Oh, yeah. This is because Lant is what, like 18, 19 or something in the final.
I don't even know if that's...
I don't even know, but like, something around there.
A few years from now. It hasn't happened yet.
Right. Obviously.
But like...
So it's 30 years in the future. So maybe 10 years from now, and she's...
in her
generously 39.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. That's what we're going to continue to believe. But
right.
So fully grown adult making fully grown adult decisions, totally fine. But I did want to point out that is who that is. And we'll get to know her a little bit here, which I didn't remember. Last time I read the final trilogy, I remember reading about Laurel and being like, oh, I vaguely know who that is. But I didn't really remember anything about Laurel.
Oh, okay.
And then reading this chapter, I'm like, oh, we're going to know Laurel.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of sad that I didn't remember much about her. But anyway, she has been invited along, and Fitz and Lord Golden and Chade are discussing that it has to be that way because the queen has decreed it.
So Lord Golden tells Tom Badgerlock to go pack, and he does, and it takes him no time at all because he has nothing else to pack. He has his weapon, he has a couple of his old clothes to do like night work in, and then the bundle of new clothes that is already packed. He has no, small assassin's tools or poisons or anything, and he feels kind of naked without those.
Yeah.
So he comes out of the room, he's like, I'm all ready, and Shade's like, sorry, but I got one more little package for you, and it's... a little roll of assassin's tools.
Yes.
And Chade offers it sheepishly, not really meeting his eyes, because Chade knows that Fitz never wanted to be an assassin. So I think he's like, I hate to do this, but you might need them.
Yeah,
like,
you know how to use them. You might as well have them. Worst case scenario. But it's funny because I'm sure in Chade's mind from this interaction, it's like, I'm so sorry to ask you to do this again and to give this to you.
Yeah,
embarrassing.
It's like my fault.
Yeah, but from Fitz's point of view, he's like, oh, thank goodness. Like, thank Ida. I was really worried I would need it and not have it. And he does not care. But I also find it really interesting because this is sort of the first mission he's been sent on where he would not have been given all the tools. And this is going to be the first mission he's sent on where he doesn't have assassin poisons ready to go. That's not the point of this.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of a weird thing to think on. Like, that would feel weird. You've always gone with all this stuff prepared. And now you're going and you have nothing. So I think it is sort of a comfort to have at least the lockpicks and whatever else is in the roll.
Mm-hmm. Fitz says that their farewells were furbuys. Wow. He says that their farewells were hurried and odd. Lord Golden and Chade make a dramatic kind of almost as if they were in public, formal farewell. And Fitz starts to do the same thing, but Chade pulls him into a hug. Says, thank you, my boy. Go in haste and bring Dutiful back to us, and go easy on the boy. This is as much my fault as his. And I forget, I highlighted this because I know it's important, and I know they talk about it later, and Chade is one of the big reasons, too, that Dutiful is kind of ostracized or like pushed away from royal life, but I forget exactly what it is about. It might be about the skill, but I just can't remember. So I highlighted it just to bring it up here, because I know we're going to talk about it in like 4 or 5 chapters.
Right.
Emboldened, I replied, watch over my boy for me and Night Eyes. I hadn't thought I'd be burdening Jenna with him, let alone a pony and a cart. And he says, I'll take care of him.
Right. And it's nice because, again, thinking about the last night's conversation that didn't go very well, I think this is a really good step to healing the relationship for both of them.
Right.
Because here Fitz is trusting
Yeah.
him and not sort of making it about like, I'm doing this so that you help Hap. It's just, hey, please make sure Hap's okay. I mean, Fitz's point of view is like,
Fitz is like emboldened. I
Yes.
replied, watch over my boy then. You know?
yeah.
I'll bring Dutiful back in
If
one
you-
piece. Please watch my boy then.
yeah. But I do think from Chade's point of view, it could also just be sort of
Yeah.
that sort of olive branch
It's a
being
step.
handed. Yeah.
You know.
Of like, hey, just make sure everything's fine.
If Lord Golden had sincerely hoped to leave Laurel behind, she disappointed him. She is waiting with all of their horses by the stable. She was in her middle to late 20s, strongly built, not unlike Kettricken herself, long-boned and muscled, yet still womanly in form. She was not from Buck, for our women tended to be small and dark, and Laurel was neither. She was not fair like Kettricken, but her eyes were blue. Her brown hair was sun-streaked with blonde and bleached near white at her temples. Sun had browned her face and hands. She had a narrow, straight nose above a strong mouth and a determined chin. She wore the leathers of a hunter, and her horse was one of those small, wiry ones that leap like a terrier over any barrier and can race like a weasel through the most tangling brush. He was a homely little gelding, and his eyes shone with spirit. So Malta kind of wickers to see Lord Golden, and Fitz's new black horse is quiet, and he says that was oddly humiliating.
Yes. The other two horses like their masters. My horse didn't even care.
So they're ready to go, and after a brief hesitation, Fitz is like, oh yeah, I'm a serving man. I have to hold the horse for
Yes.
Lord Golden to
Get the
mount.
horse set up for Lord Golden.
Yep.
And put his pack on, put Lord Golden's pack on Fitz's horse.
Yes. So they get all on their horses ready to go, and Laurel and Tom Badgerlock meet, introduce themselves to each other, and Laurel says, Laurel of the Downs family near Pitbank, I am Her Majesty's huntswoman. Tom Badgerlock, Lord Golden's man, I replied.
I do want to just quick back up a little bit from that quote because it says, as I took my reins from Laurel, she smiled at me and proffered her hand. That detail I thought was important to include because Tom Badgerlock is not wearing the charm that makes people like him at this moment.
Right.
He is still giving it to the fool. But I thought that was important because we were just talking about how people don't tend to like Fitz off
Or
of first glance.
At least think he's foreboding
Yes.
of some sort, grim in nature, maybe.
Yeah. And he was talking about how unsettling it was for people to be nice to him in the street or like
Yeah.
look kindly on him at first glance or be nice to him because he was wearing that charm. And so I just thought it was really interesting that the first person who doesn't know Fitz, who gets to meet him without the charm after we just saw what the charm does, is acting sort of similarly to people who see the charm.
True.
And so I'm not trying to say that Jenna's charm does nothing, but I just find it really interesting. And I think it says a lot to Laurel's character that she is able to be kind to
Yeah.
Fitz, despite how surly he looks.
I think it's more so of strangers in the street will smile at him with the charm rather than just avoid his glance because he's avoiding your glance. But if you're meeting someone directly and going to be traveling with them on a queen's secret mission and the queen has told you to trust them, I think it's a little bit different to
Fair.
be like, hey, how's it going? This is my name.
That's
What's yours?
fair. I don't, but still,
That's just how
mean,
I viewed it, you know?
Yeah. But I feel like he has had so many first encounters. I mean, Jenna was told that he is trustworthy, and so she was nicer to him, but she still was mistrustful of him for a while
Yeah.
meeting him.
A
You know
little
what I mean?
bit,
Like
yeah.
she tells him that. So I think it's really interesting then. And I guess just because Laurel's being nice doesn't mean that she trusts or likes Fitz. Maybe she's just
Right.
really friendly.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really interesting thing to have a character be so upfront and nice without the charm because we don't get to see that very often. So I don't know. I just thought it was a good detail to point out.
She asks where Fitz's Tom Badgerlock's family is from, and he says, near Forge on Bramble Creek, which is what happened. He called it the
Right.
little creek by their cabin. The impromptu pedigree seemed to satisfy Laurel, and the black was annoying me by tugging at her bit and trying to move up. Evidently, she was not used to following another horse. And he's like, well, the horse will just have to get used to it, basically.
And then Laurel sympathetically asks if it's a new mount because she notices the horse, and
Yeah.
Fitz sort of having a battle of will.
And yeah, he's like, yeah, haven't known her the day yet. Discovering her temperament on a journey may not be the best way to get to know her. She grins and says, but it might be the quickest. Besides, what choice do you have? And they leave by the west gate.
Yes. So Laurel's obviously very friendly and chatty and
Yeah.
just really polite. Very seems to know a lot about horses. Well, maybe not a lot, but knows enough about horses to be able to tell that Fitz is sort of struggling here, and is very, matter of fact in her responses. She seems really cool, is all I'm going to say.
So Fitz says that the West Gate, in general, usually was kept secured in his boyhood. It wasn't really open at all. It was little more than a goat path, but now it stands open with a small manned guardhouse next to it. It's obvious that carts use this place, this meandering path, and it carried them on towards the river, and he caught glimpses of wharves, warehouses, and he's still shocked at even that development when he sees cottages there too. And he can't really bite his tongue back when he says, folk never used to live here. And Laurel answers him saying, oh, you haven't been here since the Red Ship War then, because people moved in not wanting to be too close to Buckkeep because they didn't want to live in the cities.
Right.
But they wanted to be nearby in case the raids started again. So basically they created the suburbs.
Right. And Fitz points out that this is where Verity used to love hunting.
Yeah.
That obviously there's no game anymore because of the houses, but it's really weird to be in a place that used to be so secluded and a hunting ground basically to now the suburbs. It's really a weird change, but also interesting to know that Laurel can immediately place like, oh, you haven't been here since the war ended.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it was sort of a change that has been slowly growing, but isn't new news.
We passed another tavern and then several cheap roaming houses, such as sailors seemed to favor. The road followed the river upstream. Sometimes it was wide and sandy, and other places timbers had been laid in sort of a boardwalk over boggy stretches. The other horses seemed to take no notice of the change, but at every one we traversed, my black slowed her pace and set back her ears. She did not like the drumming of her hooves on the timber. I set my hand to her withers and quested toward her, offering reassurance. She turned her head to roll an eye at me, but remained as distant as ever. She probably would have refused to go on if there had not been 2 other horses to follow. She was plainly far more interested in her own kind than in any companionship I might offer. I shook my head at the difference between her and the amiable horses in Byrric's stable and wondered if his wit had made the difference. So now he thinks about how, even though he kept it in check, if all of the animals in that stable were more receptive to him, to Fitz's wit, because Byrric had been there touching them as their mother's tongue licked them the first time. And his presence was there kind of opening them up to that human presence more so. And that's quite possible.
I mean, yeah, it's a really interesting thought experiment, right? Like, is it something that happened because of the placement of a witted person there?
Right.
Is having a stable master who isn't witted, making it so that his horses are less likely to be? I don't know. Also, we don't really know where this horse came from exactly. Fitz did mention when he first got the horse that it had clearly never been misused, which implies that, like there's no training training had to have happened, but it clearly was not a horse that was treated poorly by its previous owner.
Right.
But we don't know if this is like a wild horse that was.
Yeah, we just don't know anything about it.
I don't know. So I think it's interesting to then think about, Was it just that all of the horses wanted to wit bond with Burrick and were happy to have Fitz acknowledge them? Or was it, just a happy coincidence? Maybe even the fact that their mothers were receptive made them more receptive. You could play that game as
Right.
well. It could just be inherited. Who knows?
But his thoughts about Burrick kind of turned to Burrick's thoughts on the wit and how he always deemed it as a dark, evil magic, and how death and dismemberment was the only recognized cure for the wit. And suddenly Fitz's equanimity over Dutiful's absence was threatened. True, the boy had not been kidnapped, but although the skill had let me find him, it was undoubtedly the wit the boy was employing in his night hunts. If he betrayed himself to anyone, he might be put to death. So no longer a holiday trip with a friend and just ride there and ride back after you find him. It still does have some dire consequences because he's actively using the wit, wandering around in a land with that doesn't like witted people.
Yeah. And I think that was sort of, as I mentioned earlier before, with his sort of attitude of, oh, it's a fun little vacation. It's not that dire because I checked on him and he's alive and fine. Like, that doesn't mean that he will be alive and fine tomorrow.
Right.
It just means that for now he's safe, which is good and reassuring.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting to see that it took this long for Fitz to realize, like, oh, there's a bigger problem at play. And that's
it's something that he could have just waited to acknowledge now. He always was in the back of his mind, just like one layer at a time, just kind of relief he felt. Oh, Dutiful's alive. Okay.
Right.
We
And
have a goal.
He didn't really have to examine the whole process because he knew that he was going. Like, he's going to get Dutiful. There's no need to panic or panic others. Like, it is, it on paper is an easy ask.
And he's very pragmatic about those things and just doesn't jump around like Kettricken was doing. Just like, oh, what if he's dead? What's this?
Right.
Like, what if I'm the blame? And
That's
he's like, one step at a time.
Yeah.
He could be dead. Either way, we have to do one step at a time. You know?
And I do think that that is important to point out in his personality because it really is reminiscent of the wolf and shows how much Night Eyes has rubbed off on him, right? Mm-hmm. He is sort of living in the moment in this. Like, he's fine for now. Why worry about what's going to happen tomorrow?
It's also Chade's way of doing things too.
Yeah, definitely. But I think it's really interesting to see that because I think there was a time when Fitz would have been worried about all the outcomes and all the possibilities, but now we see that he's able to sort of parse through those feelings at more appropriate times. Like, when he's getting ready to leave isn't the time to be thinking about all the things that could go wrong. Now that he's on the journey, he can start thinking, what are the risks? What is what could possibly happen? What should I be prepared for?
Mm-hmm. So Fitz is thinking about Burrick and is like, no wonder Burrick threatened to beat it out of me and went out without the wit for so long. But how could I regret this? And he opens himself up to the wit and expands his senses around and acknowledges all of the living beings beside him and really feels the world. Birds in the trees overhead were bright startles of life amongst the leaves. From the largest of the trees we passed us since a deep green flowing of being, a welling of existence that was unlike any animal's awareness, and yet was life all the same. All the world shimmered with life, and I was a part of that network. Regret this oneness? Deny this expanded tactility? He can't.
No. There's also, when he does expand his wit, there's also the talk about how Laurel next to him feels like a creature, like a living creature. Not a human anymore, just a living being.
A large and healthy creature, yes. But Lord Golden was as noble as usual.
Yeah, that just like Beloved has always been, it's sort of, he skirts the out. I don't know. It's explained really interesting. It says, he was as unknowable to my wit as the fool ever was. From even the sense he rippled aside, and yet his very mystery was a familiar one to me. So it's not described the same as the witted ones. Witted people are like a rock. There's nothing there. So clearly Lord Golden / Beloved / Fool has some sense about him, but it
just
isn't,
like ripples aside from
It's like, because whatever a white is different enough to not necessarily be part of this wit touch,
Right. Yeah.
which is an interesting thought because I think it does point to maybe this is unique to Beloved because he is the white of this age. That's like a theory that I have, tinfoil, that he's rippling around the senses because he's not one with this age. He is the maker of it, if that makes
Maybe.
sense. But I don't know. That's just like a weird thought I had.
I don't think he can sense Illustor either, though.
That's fair.
The
So
pale woman later. So
maybe
we'll
it's
have to pay
just-
attention.
yeah, people who can interact with
Yeah.
the fate aren't as living. I don't know. Weird. It's a interesting way to describe the whites, I guess.
Or you can just say that whites aren't affected by the wit in general.
Also that I guess there are
Easy
people who
explanation.
aren't touched by skill in any
Yeah.
way. It makes sense that a different being could escape wit.
Mhm. So Fitz is quiet and Laurel speaks up on that, saying like, you're a quiet one. And he doesn't really know what to say. So he just shrugs and nods. And then to say something into the silence, he asks if she has been a huntswoman for the queen long. She replies, it's been 7 years now. Ah, then you know her well, I rejoined, wondering how much she truly knew of our present errand. Well enough, Laurel replied, and I could almost see her wondering the same about me. So Fitz starts to play the game then. He says, Lord Golden visits Galeton in search of game birds. He has a passion for collecting feathers, you know. I did not directly ask any question. She looked at me from the corner of her eye. Lord Golden has many passions, it is said, she observed in a low voice, and the funds to indulge them all. She gave me another glance as if to ask if I would defend my master, but if there was an insult, I did not take its meaning. She looked ahead and spoke on. As for me, I but travel along to scout the hunting for my queen. She likes to go after game birds in the autumn. I have hopes that in Galeton woods we may find the kind that she likes best. So do we all hope, I agreed. I liked her caution. We would get along well enough, I decided. And there's a couple things in there. One, they're not just talking about game birds, they're talking
Yes.
about their excuses for it. But the other thing is about Lord Golden specifically that Laurel mentions, and that is kind of the crux of the argument between him and Fitz later on, is that the rumor is that Lord Golden likes men. This is what I'm reading into this.
Okay.
Is that Lord Golden likes men, and it's one of those things that is not accepted in this society. And so it's Lord Golden has many passions, it is said, and the funds to indulge them all. So the rumor is that he's paying his manservant to be with him, right? And that when they get
Right,
to Galekeep, Civil looks at him weirdly too, and then pays attention to Lord Golden. But I can't remember if that's because he suspects the Lord Golden thing, or if that's because he was warned about somebody with wit coming. I just can't remember that detail.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, I know that that's a rumor later.
Yeah.
I don't know how soon the rumor pops up. Also, who started that rumor?
I think it pops up when they're at Galekeep because Lord Golden makes the discussion happens fairly soon, or it started because at Galekeep, Lord Golden kisses Civil's like palm or something
Oh, yeah.
to make a distraction and like get them out. Like,
oh, yeah.
have them kicked
Isn't
out
he
kind of thing.
taking a thorn out of his hand or something?
Something like
Whatever. Something
We'll get
happens
there.
and then it
but
turns into more.
that's why Civil is like so weirded out by him later on.
Okay.
So I knowing that happens, that's how I read into these looks. But it could just be Laurel trying to suss out what they know,
Okay.
right? It could just be that.
Yeah. I don't know. It's so interesting to me because that would imply that at Buckkeep there's already rumors that Lord Golden likes men. And we know that Beloved is not taking anyone home or going to anyone's house. Like,
Right.
that is just too,
But
I guess we don't know
if
that.
he has
But
all of these ladies fawning on him, surrounded by noble women, and he doesn't do anything, and they're all kind of just like left hanging, or they hang out in groups or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But
They mentioned servants like to gossip.
yeah, that's true. But also, like, I I'm such a low class savant because I'm like, who cares? They're all royal or not royal, but they're all of noble court. Like, who cares what they do? They're all weird. But like, maybe it's not normal to have a bunch of women fawning over you and to not express interest. I've read too many Regency era books where the main guy character is always the back corner and he's the most eligible bachelor and all the women want him and nobody thinks he's gay. You know what I mean? They're all just like, oh, we're just not good enough to pique his interest. I don't know. Mr. Darcy, I'm looking at you, but I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe
I don't know. That's just, as a rereader coming into it, that's how I interpreted that.
that's fair. I'm with Fitz where I'm like, I don't get the rebuff that's supposed to be there, that he's supposed to.
Right, the insults.
Yeah,
like,
what's the insult? That he has a lot of money? I guess it seems like he does. So yeah. So I guess it makes sense if it's maybe Laurel trying to parse out if there is
right.
more to their relationship.
Because then she does continue asking him about his relationship with Lord Golden.
Yeah,
It's
like
have
how
you known
long?
him long?
Yeah.
Like, and no, not directly. I had heard he was looking for a man, and I was glad when an acquaintance recommended me. Then you've done this kind of work before. Not for some time. For the past 10 years or so, I've lived quietly, just my boy and me. But he's of an age to apprentice out, and that takes hard coin. This is the fastest way I know to earn it. And his mother? She asked lightly. Won't she be lonely with both of you away? She's gone many years, I said. Then, realizing that Hap might sometime venture up to Buckkeep, I decided to keep as close to the truth as I could. He's a fosterling I took in. I never knew his mother, but I think of him as my son. You're not married, then? The question surprised me. No, I am not. Neither am I. She gave me a small smile as if to say this gave us much in common. So, like, that line of questioning reinforces my thought of that previous. It's like, have you known Lord Golden long? It's like, no, I've heard about him and I heard he was looking for a man and I was glad he was, I was recommended. Like, okay, why are you doing it? Well, it takes a lot of money to apprentice out my son. What about your wife? I don't have a wife. I'm not married.
And also he's not my biological child.
Right. Yeah.
I adopted him.
So it just like, that's kind of
Okay.
setting up the scene where it's just like, ooh, it all kind of reinforces Laurel's thoughts, if those were her thoughts to begin with.
With you saying that before getting to this conversation, I now see how it could be her trying to suss out if they're in a relationship of some kind.
Right.
And if it's possible, and Fitz sort of playing right into that by not having a wife. Like, he has a son, but it's not actually his biological son.
Yeah.
And he needs a lot of money. And
this is the fastest way to make it. Being a serving man to a lord, you know?
Yeah, like how much do they actually normally make?
Probably better than a farmer, though.
I mean, yeah, fair. I don't know. I don't know what people make. Again, currency in this world, crazy. I don't get it. But it's really interesting, I guess, if you think about it from that point of view, that maybe this is sort of, are they together? Are the rumors true? But again, who starts the rumor? Because you were saying, well, later he does something to Civil, but that hasn't even happened yet.
Right.
So,
and I don't know if that starts it or if that just kind of
inflames
it. And
right.
That's why it gets back to Fitz.
And to be fair, we haven't seen how Lord Golden acts in public at all yet. For all we know, Lord Golden's flirting with everybody.
Right.
Like Lord Golden, because Beloved doesn't care. Beloved does seem to feel like it's all a fluid thing, and who cares?
Pansexual in general.
Yeah. So like, I definitely could see Beloved.
Or sexual, I guess.
I don't know. To be fair, I don't think Beloved seems to particularly like women in general, but I mean, that's not fair. He seems to think them petty, especially when it's involving a woman who likes Fitz. Although he likes Kettricken, so I don't know. But it seems that he's more drawn towards men, in my opinion. I don't know. Like you said, maybe it's just Fitz sexual.
Different readings, yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so as far as we know, Lord Golden flirts with everybody and is flamboyant. And so why wouldn't he have a relationship with his servant if he seems to flirt with everybody and has sent so many servants away so far? And this one gets to stay. What's special about this one? Well, I don't know.
Well, she continues on asking Fitz just general small talk. How do you like Buckkeep? It's like, well enough. I used to live here when I was a kid. It's changed a great deal since then. And she continues saying that she's from Tilth herself. Up on Brandy Downs is where I grew up, though my mother was from Buck. Her family lived not far from Galeton. I know the area, for I ranged there as a child, but mostly we lived near the Downs, where my father was huntsman for Lord Sitswell. My father taught both my brothers and me the skills of being a huntsman, and when he died, my older brother took his position. My younger brother returned to live amongst my mother's people. I stayed on mostly training the coursing horses, and when the queen came through, they needed extra hands. She took a liking to me, etc., etc. That's how I became the huntswoman.
Right.
But her mother's people are the witted community.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, because she has her younger brother is witted as well, and that's why he went back to live with the mother's family.
I was just going to say...
And that's why the mother and father lived apart as well. I think.
That's what I was going to say. I was reading this without remembering that she's witted, thinking...
She's not.
Well, no, but...
Yes, her family.
Her family having ties to witted people. I was thinking about it because she talks about her mother's people. And it's just
a
such
weird phrase.
Yeah, especially because her mother clearly wasn't a lady or, somebody of import if her dad was only a huntsman. Because if her mom was... had a title, then her father would have gained it by marrying her, and I don't
live amongst my mother's people.
Yeah, it just was such interesting wording that I was like, oh, they have to be witted. But Fitz doesn't seem to pick up anything weird about that.
Right.
He just sort of glosses over it. So it's a good thing to pick up. And maybe I had that in the back of my head because I have read this, and part of me does know, but it's a fun little detail sprinkled in there.
He's trying to think of something to say to that when Lord Golden waves them forward, saying, those are the last of the houses for a while. I didn't want to do this in front of other people, but we do have need of haste, and we need to make the last ferry across the river, so let's have a race.
Yeah, keep up as best you can. I'll hold the ferry for you all.
And, Malta is incredibly fast. We know that, his horse. So he springs off, and Laurel follows, saying, I'll have something to say about that.
My white cap can match her any day.
Yep. And Fitz uses a wit suggestion to his horse, catch them, and was almost shocked at her competitive response. From a walk, she all but leapt into a run. The smaller horses had the lead on us. Packed mud flew up from their hooves, and Malta led only by virtue of the narrowing trail. My black's longer stride diminished their lead until we were close behind them, getting the full benefit of the mud they threw. And the sound of his horses spurred the horses in front of them on, so they gained more lead again. And Fitz's horse wants to catch up, but Fitz is like, I don't want to get a face full of mud. But the horse is like, no, we're racing.
The horse does not care that Fitz wants to stay a little bit cleaner. Yeah. And to be fair, right now they're in a narrow part of the path, so there's no way to overtake them. So the only reason she's sort of okay with holding back is because she can't pass them. Yeah. But the second the path widens up, she shoots off ahead.
Yes. I heard them both cry out to their horses, and I thought they would overtake us. But like a lengthening wolfhound on the scent, my black reached out to seize even longer strides of the path and fling it behind us. I glanced back at them once to see both their faces alight with the challenge. Faster, I suggested to my black. I did not really think she had more speed in her, but as a flame roars up a dry tree, she again surged forward. I laughed aloud at the pure joy of it and saw her ears flicker in response. She did not reach toward my mind with any thought, but I felt a tentative glimmer of her approval. We would do well enough together. We were the first to reach Lampcross Ferry. So this is the second time he said we would do well enough or get along well enough. One was to Laurel and the second to his horse.
Yes. And I think it's really interesting to have this sort of relationship and to have him put forward dog attributes to this horse.
Right, I know.
Because
the lengthening wolfhound strides.
Yeah, and just I don't know, I think it's really interesting to have that because there is that connection and he is more of a dog guy.
Yeah.
Although we do know that he does like horses as well, like for a wit companion sense. Like,
and we know that he rejects the future wit bond offer from the horse too.
yes.
I think after Night Eyes dies, riding back, he's like, no, I can't.
Yeah, it's too soon. It does make me sad. Also, it makes me wonder, can you have two wit bonds at the same time?
I wouldn't think so.
I mean, like physically you probably could, but I feel like you wouldn't want to, because then are the animals witted to each other, or can they hear each other through the bond?
Right.
Like,
I don't know.
I just feel like there's such a weird thing there. And maybe that's why the horse is reticent to talk to Fitz, not only because he's a human, but because he's very clearly bonded to a wolf. I mean, I guess we don't know what animals see from their point of view. We don't know if they can tell if somebody has a wit partner or what that wit partner is. So maybe, I don't know, I guess Fennel maybe would have had some comments about it if you could see that he was wit bound to a wolf.
Yeah, we don't know. It's interesting because we know that if you bond like a flock of things, your mind kind of goes.
Yeah.
So I don't know if bonding more than one animal would be very detrimental to your mental health.
Well, yeah, and
you
I
have
guess
more entities crowding in there.
Yeah, but also if it is separated by time, right, then presumably you have the time to separate yourself from your original wit partner and then learn how to do that again with the new bond.
Maybe,
and I don't know. Just saying.
That's the end of the chapter.
Yeah.
Fitz is starting to have excitement in this journey. At least he's not. Yeah. He could be happy in this moment.
Yeah, I think we can say Fitz is happy right now, even though there's sort of a life on the line.
Right.
I'm happy saying Fitz is happy at the end of this chapter.
Okay. There's going to be a small few, so
there's only a handful, so I think we can give it to him this time.
All right, Fitz is happy. Well, thank you for tuning in. If you have thoughts on the chapter, please let us know, and thoughts on Laurel, please let us know. isfitzhappy@gmail.com, or you can message or comment on any of our social medias at isfitzhappy. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Reddit, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, all of those. Please let us know what you're thinking, and if you have any comments or questions for us.
See you next week. All right, now we get to do our favorite part of the podcast, which is group discussion time. Talk about what you guys bring to us. And we're going to start off with a comment on Blue Sky from Dagenhart. Dagenhart messaged to talk about how we finally get to meet Thick, even though it's only short, because we've only had the musical melodies coming into Fitz's consciousness. So vaguely meeting Thick. And I guess technically we saw Thick getting beat up. That's the first time we're meeting Thick, which is exciting. And Dagenhart also says, I think no one has ever written a character with Down syndrome, which I suspect Thick has, in this way. I'm looking very much forward to seeing more of him.
Yeah, and I'm not an expert on what kind of representation there has been of potentially Down syndrome characters.
Yeah.
In fantasy, I know there are a lot of great discussions from Reddit, r fantasy, reddit.com/r/fantasy, that talks about different representations, different disabilities, physical and mental health issues, representations in characters. So I'd advise looking at all of those. But yeah, I haven't seen or personally read a character with as much depth and care taken for this character.
Yeah, I think
throughout the years.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever read another book that had a Down syndrome character. Again, I don't know if we know for sure that's what Thick has, but it's pretty widely speculated.
Right. Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting to have Thick be a character with Down syndrome, especially because I think Thick is so unique and his own person, which is true about everyone is who has different disabilities. I think that there's sometimes like a monolith, and especially with Down syndrome, there's that sort of idea that they're all happy go lucky and just like so happy to be alive. And so it's kind of nice to get a reading of somebody with Down syndrome who isn't just happy all the time.
Right, they
And
have
like,
depth, you know?
yeah, and like there is something going on with Thick. I don't know. I just really appreciate that, I guess, that there is a character who isn't just a token character that is the characteristic that everybody thinks of when they think of that thing. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
it's nice to
I'm
see
excited
that.
to see it too.
Yeah. So also I love Thick. Thick is so great. And I'm very excited to get Thick in the midst. And I love Thick and Dutiful's friendship specifically. I think it's really nice. And I love how well they get along. So I'm really excited for that friendship to blossom as well. So thank you, Dagenhart. We also are big fans. Next, we got a comment on Spotify.
Yeah, and Tamara messaged us and commented on our last episode. And Tamara was speaking about how it is incredibly hard to watch Fitz suffer through that. But at the same time, it might be the kindest thing that Chade can do to break him out of that cycle and just help him through that pain in other ways and not rely on that elf bark.
Yeah, definitely. So good insight there. Thank you, Tamara. We also got some Instagram messages and comments.
Yeah. And I guess, is it Dealy Bop was a comment? Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your handle on Instagram there. But they were talking about Hap's apprenticeship and Fitz's kind of reticence about asking for help about that. And it kind of comes down to the fact that they think that Fitz feels a duty and a responsibility to help Hap through that. But when Fitz is accepting help for, getting new clothes for Lord Golden, getting a sword and all that stuff, it's for the job, right?
Yeah, that's part of the perks of the job, so to speak. Which I think definitely makes sense, and I really like that idea. I think it also plays into what we talked about this chapter with Fitz suddenly realizing that things are expensive, that maybe it doesn't feel like a big ask to Lord Golden to pay all this stuff for his character because he doesn't quite grasp how much money is being spent on this character. And therefore it doesn't feel as bad as whatever. Like he's talking about feeling like he's really overlooked how much he got out of being Fitz chivalry, right? And so now here again, he is overlooking what he's getting out of being Tom Badgerlock, because of course he's going to get a weapon and a horse and a saddle and new clothes. Obviously, that's part of living in the castle.
And I really don't think he has that attitude towards it, but
but I think subconsciously he does. I think subconsciously there's that sort of, that's how it's always been at the castle, is that he's taken care of. And maybe he also in some way thinks that it's the crown paying for it, not Lord Golden. But I think it is beloved paying.
No, it is.
Yeah,
it's beloved.
Fully beloved. But I don't know. But I do like the idea that it's more obligation towards Hap versus sort of the job.
I like half of this comment, and I really like half of it a lot. The half that I have trouble with is because he sees the Lord Golden side, like that's just part of the job thing. I think that's because he trusts and is a really close friend to Lord Golden, and that's why there's no hesitation on that side or kind of asking about it, right? He's fulfilling his role. They're friends, but he has the hesitation. And I really like your comment about Fitz feels a responsibility to fulfill Hap's apprenticeship himself. And he feels like a failure not having done that and to have to ask for help.
Yeah.
So it's really like I really don't want to do this because then I admit that I didn't do things properly. and that feels bad.
Yeah.
So I really like that insight.
Yeah, so thank you, Daily Bop. We got a DM from Peculiar Ponies about some comments we made last episode about the epigraph talking on hunting cats. And they were talking about how cats can walk and hunt just fine on rocky terrain. And this is in comment to I said it felt odd that they're talking that the rocky terrain of Buckkeep is better suited for dogs to hunt,
Right.
because cats are well known to be agile.
Yeah.
But Peculiar Ponies pointed out that later on we learn that hunting cats specifically are carried horseback on little cushions
Yeah.
on the horse's back during the hunt before being released to go hunt. So it makes more sense that it would be harder to bring a cat along in that way, because on the rocky terrain, a horse is going to be bumping a lot, especially at the back where the cat would be resting.
Yeah. So dogs can bring themselves along
Yes.
on the hunt, and cats have to be
would
kind of
not.
carried along. So
Yes.
yeah, it makes a little bit more sense that way.
So thank you for clearing that up, Peculiar Ponies. We also got a message from Gil, who wrote in to ask us if we have been able to picture Malta's red crest / scar thing on the brow. I can't really see it in my mind. I was wondering if you could, or if one of the listeners can and can draw.
I did a quick little just Google image search of Malta Vestrit, and I saw some fan art, and it seems very mixed of how it's portrayed.
Yes.
A lot of it's kind of in the middle of her forehead,
Mm-hmm.
and some fan art has it as like almost like, oh man, now I'm gonna fail on what dinosaur this is, but the one that has like the fan running, almost like a fin running down its back. That's kind of like some fan art is portrayed as Malta having like a red kind of fin going around from her forehead, and some of it's kind of looks more like a wound, and some of it's just red scaling.
Yeah.
It's really kind of depends on who the artist is.
Whenever I think about it, I go back and forth between it being like crest shaped, like a crescent moon almost, and being like on the middle of the forehead. I think middle of the forehead makes the most sense to me. But middle of the forehead, sort of half moon shape where there's the scales growing out of it, and it's like kind of a lump.
It's convex, like pointing towards the eyebrows, right? Like it's kind of like
going down, like it's
an arc towards the middle of the nose and then going back up towards the hairline.
Yes, but I don't think it goes all the way down to the eyebrows because she's able to wear a headband to cover it.
Interesting.
But I also sometimes think of it as sort of like, for lack of better terms, a lump. Sort of like if you get hit in the head and you get the goose egg whenever you like bruise your head. I don't know if I've ever done that as an adult, but but sort of that like bump shape that's just in the middle of her forehead but covered with scales.
I always pictured it similar to a wound, because that's what it started out as, as like a head wound. She got hit on the head and it kind of cracked her skull a bit, and it's not perfectly centered. It's a little scar-ish, ropey kind of shaped with jagged edges. Goes back into her hairline, and it's only kind of peeking out onto the forehead. And then it kind of, it like ruptures up on the sides from there and becomes a little bit more like mountain range-ish, seeing it from the top.
Okay.
And kind of retreats back in. That's kind of how I view it, but I don't know. There are different depictions online, and everyone seems to have a different take.
Yeah, but I really like the idea of everybody saying what they think it looks like, because it is kind of, I guess, up to your imagination, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, Gil was talking about how Chapter 34, Episode 232, the satrap mentions minstrels, and that made me think that, as far as I can remember, minstrels are not mentioned in the live ship traders, and they're not a big thing like they are in the Six Duchies.
Yeah, so as we know, the Six Duchies, minstrels are pretty much the history keepers.
Yeah.
They witness contracts. They bring in minstrels to settle disputes about land and things like that, because they're supposed to know the history.
Yes.
And the actual legal matters, and they are kind of the knowledge repositories.
And they're supposed to be these like apolitical figures, so they're just
Right.
keeping the history alive,
Mhm.
record keeping.
And
They're
then
not.
entertainment as the secondary
Yes.
part.
Yeah, definitely. But I think it's true we don't really hear about minstrels in that capacity during the live ship traders.
And I think that's because because the Six Duchies are barbarians.
Yeah.
Because Jamalia and that empire does not need a person to pass down oral histories. They have libraries. They have jobs, magistrates, wandering judges. They have
Right.
people who write down everything, and a lot of people know how to read and write.
Yeah, it seems much more common that most people are literate.
At least the groups that we were reading with, and there is a larger population in those lands, so at least some of those jobs would have to have a requirement of being literate, not just, in the royal family.
Right. Whereas I think it's important because in Buckkeep, it's sort of the people of the keep are allowed to send their children to school at the keep.
The town,
yeah. But it's not necessarily the norm. And
it's not required either.
Molly didn't learn her letters until later in life. And sort of in general, the people that Fitz hung out with in town didn't know how to read.
Yeah.
Whereas it feels more like, even though we're with an aristocratic family with the Vestrits, that it's not just the old blood families who know how to read. It's something that most town people.
See, that's confusing. You said
Sorry,
old blood.
I did say old blood. It's
the old trader.
Old
families.
trader. Yeah.
The big town traders.
Sorry, too many
old blood, too many traditionals.
Old capital O old societies.
But that's my thoughts on it. The other thought is that the satrap would bring it up because he would be the only one who really could afford minstrels and things. Bingtown that we're centered on is a trading port. And sure, they'd probably make some money, but then they would have to leave right away.
Right.
Minstrels. They're not going to stick around.
And I think that's the other important factor is that while minstrels have that duality to them in Buckkeep, where they are historians and entertainers, in Jamalia they can just be entertainers. And so it makes more sense that really rich aristocratic people would have the ability to just have an entertainer around. And we do see that the Vestrits are outside of the norm and that other families have shows put on at their house, whether that is traveling troops, or puppeteers, or both. And so there is sort of mention in the periphery of those being there, but only in an entertainment standpoint.
They're just
never legally.
They're not integral to the history of the lands.
Exactly.
Anything.
So
great thought on that, though. That I had never really called it to mind to explain it why, and this kind of made me think down that track.
Yeah, so thank you. Also, apparently, we've changed up our answer on how we started our podcast.
Yeah, Gil wrote in and said, "Thank you for the very in-depth explanation of how you started the podcast. It's different to what you said last time you explained it." I don't remember what I said last time I explained it, so I'm glad that this was in depth. It's kind of concerning that it's been different.
Yeah, I don't.
Memory changes.
Yeah, memory
stuff.
changes.
We've been forged,
or we've just lived it long enough that we have rose-colored glasses this far away.
Yeah,
but I don't know. So hopefully it wasn't too different. Maybe the context makes it seem different.
Yeah,
because I feel like before we kind of barely touched on it, and then going more in depth, maybe that gives more insight. Hopefully that's what it is, and not just that we've completely changed how we feel about the way we started. But you know what? We're human.
So thank you very much, Gail, for writing in. We also had a comment on Facebook from Ellen, and Ellen is writing in to talk about addiction, skill addiction, and a little bit of the elf bark, but mostly skill addiction.
Yes. So last episode, whenever we had Fitz in front of Chade, I talked a little bit about how I was reading the chapter as Fitz wanting to sort of gatekeep skilling from Chade, and that he's putting off skilling in front of Chade because of that weird feeling he has around this is a privilege he got and Chade doesn't deserve.
Right.
And Ellen says she does sort of agree with my take on it. That's how she read it as well. However, when thinking more about the addiction aspect, we mentioned his addiction and the secret. It got her thinking. Often addiction comes with a feeling of shame, and my first thought was that Fitz was ashamed to indulge in his addiction in front of his mentor and role model. But then I couldn't really remember if Fitz had described much feelings of shame around his skilling in addiction. What do you think? And I think Fitz has talked a little bit about his shame of addiction. It's not outright. He doesn't fully just state, I am ashamed.
Yeah, he's not
But
shamed about the elf bark at all. Like, that's
no,
just something that he does.
but
But the
skilling,
skill,
I think he does feel shame for because he does feel guilty around using it, especially when it comes to Night Eyes asking him not to.
right?
And sort of reaching out, knowing nobody's out there, or at least thinking nobody's out there, makes him feel bad for even doing it. And I think he always sort of has that shame around using skill because he doesn't feel worthy in some ways, maybe, or maybe just because there's nothing that he's gaining out of it truly. It just makes him feel more alone.
And it's never really a focus, and that's probably because Fitz is our point of view character.
Right. And so I do also really like the idea that it is something where it's a shame thing, but also there's shame from Fitz because he can't always control his skilling. So he has to deal with what comes with that and failing in front of your mentor who thinks so highly of you and thinks you're good enough to potentially train the prince. And then you're going to sit in front of him and do nothing potentially. That would be really scary and
Right.
shameful.
Yeah.
So even if it's not shame of the addiction, shame in general of the potential to fail,
Mhm.
like it makes sense. So I think that's a really good way to look at it as well. We also had a message on Facebook directly from Hedwig, which was talking a really funny comment about how Dutiful was literally being catfished through the wit to go running after a woman that doesn't really exist.
Pretty
So
funny.
that is a really funny thing. There is potential with that, and I didn't even see it. So thank you for pointing it out. Very funny. Thanks, Hedwig.
And then we also had a few emails in the past week or so. Where do you want to start with those?
Ooh, I don't know.
Let's start with Anna's, I
Okay.
guess. Anna wrote in to talk about the relationship between Fitz and the Fool and is speaking on it from a different angle.
Yes.
We touched on a lot of things before of how Robin Hobb insists that it's not coming from a like a romantic
yeah.
relationship angle, and it's friendship and more intimate that way. And Anna says that might just be a woman writing relationships from her point of view into this, and it's not a man to man relationship, normal or typical, stereotypical man to man relationship.
Right.
There's more intimacy in, again, stereotypically, more intimacy in women relationships, friendships.
Yeah. And I think this is a really good thing to point out that Robin Hobb does have biases, obviously. We all
Right.
do.
Yeah.
And those can come across in your writings. And I think it's interesting to look at that female bias when writing a deep friendship, because if Fitz and Beloved were both women, it wouldn't be weird to sit on a mattress on the floor and giggle and hold hands and cuddle. You know what I mean? Like, that's, girls do that in a platonic way a lot. Like, as a woman, a lot of my friendships are very intimate in that way, where I love my friends, and in that way we physically touch each other, we hug, we cry together. And I think that is a very female friendship from my lived experience. And obviously everyone's different and people have different boundaries in their relationships. But I think that's an interesting way to look at that. Maybe this is sort of, that's why it came across as Robin Hobb later being like, no, it was never intended to be romantic,
Right.
because Robin Hobb was just writing what they viewed as an intimate friendship. And
Which is a very interesting perspective to come from, because
Yeah.
like, as a guy reading these, the most typical friendship that I would read in these would be Fitz and Hands, and they were friends for like 2 years.
Yeah.
That's like, that's the closest friendship that I can imagine that would be typical to my life.
Yeah, which I think is so interesting. And we also had that perspective from our reader who is ex-military, who was talking about how, you have sort of that bond with
Right.
going through the military that makes you closer than normal friendships. And so I think that's interesting to have that perspective as well, that like different aspects of your life and how you live can make it different how you interpret relationships.
Right.
And what is normal to you in your relationships can be so outside of the norm for other people. It's so interesting. And so I really do like this new perspective idea that perhaps it is just that Robin Hobb is a woman writing a relationship.
Yeah.
That's platonic.
Anna talks about how there's a lot of examples in quote unquote literature that about men writing women poorly, but this could just be an example of the other way around, of just having that incorrect view about something.
Yeah.
So very interesting.
Yeah. And I do like that point out too, that a lot of times we do call out male writers for writing a woman poorly, and then we have a woman writing a poor example of a male friendship. But
again, she does write some of them okay.
Yeah.
But also a lot of her views on like, oh, these are strong friendships that they have are very queer coded.
Yeah.
Like Burrick and Chivalry, or Fitz and the Fool, like, or Lacey and Patience.
Yeah.
Even like, and I know that's not man to man, but like a lot of these things, and I don't know if anybody's asked her directly on these things, but it's very, very interesting to me that closeness could just be from her experiences and not typical to other people's.
Yeah. So I don't know. I really like that perspective. Something I weirdly haven't thought of before. So
Yeah.
It feels so on. Like once I read it, I was like, duh. But thank you, Anna, for bringing that up.
Anna's second part of their email is talking about how the first time they were going through the books, they thought Chade was witted because of Chade's pet. He has a weasel Slink. And then the Assassin's Quest, Fitz meets a ferret. Anna says a weasel on the top of the roof that says it wants to kill Regal, and eventually they do. And it's later seen with Chade. That is Small Ferret.
Yes.
And Small Ferret was bonded to Big Ferret, who died.
I don't remember Big Ferret's real name.
We don't know because
that's all we get.
just meet Big Ferret through Small Ferret.
Right.
Who's saying like my wit partner died due to Regal, basically.
Right.
And we were going to go kill Regal. So that's what I'm going to do. And Chade just likes ferrets and weasels as pets.
Yeah.
That's it. Like I think that's the thing.
But I would agree. I think for a while I did wonder if there was wit there, but I think Fitz would have picked up on some sort of bond between them if there was any there.
Yeah.
So maybe that's
Snip,
why
snip.
I just sort of didn't dig deeper into that, but I do see how you could think he might be.
Right. And the Small Ferret / Big Ferret thing kind of happens very quickly. And then later we hear about how Regal died with 2 puncture holes in his neck. And then a ferret was seen walking around with Chade later, right?
Yes.
Like it just kind of comes out of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that was a wit partner that Fitz spoke to briefly before Small Ferret moved on with the intention of killing Regal.
Yes.
So thank you very much, Anna.
Yes. We then have an email from Dagenhart, who is talking about beloved never being completely immune to charms.
Yeah, we have a lot of emails about charms and hedge magic now.
Yes. Yeah. So Dagenhart says, I'd wager that Beloved is never completely immune to the charms because of them being a white. They are, after all, at least in part, a human also. As far as I understand, there being no pure whites anymore. Boy, that feels awkward to write. Which also, yes, every time we talk about capital W whites, I'm like,
the pure-blooded
please,
whites.
Please, Hobb. Why couldn't you have thought of like literally any other term? But we all get it.
But also that the hedge magic kind of remains a mystery to Dagenhart of how Beloved can interact with it. It seems that some people seem to be born with some kind of innate magic that falls somewhere on the circle. Others are born without magic at all. Maybe Jenna's sister was completely numb to magic and therefore didn't see anything in her father's sticks and beads. Maybe Beloved's human part has a wisp of magic strengthened by the silver on his fingertips, and therefore they can feel something about the charms. Who knows? Which is very interesting because if it's possible, we know people can be born without any aptitude for the skill at all and be completely numb to it.
Yes.
We don't know that for other magics.
Yeah.
So it could be very interesting that some people just are not born with any aptitude. But also, on the other hand, you have to be kind of affected by the charms. And we'll get into that. Somebody else writes in about
Yes.
hedge magic, and it wouldn't make sense if some people are not affected by it because that's the point of them, right?
Yeah, you buy it because it works.
Yes.
And if it doesn't work for everyone, then it doesn't work.
Right. So there is some sort of weird hand wavy, like this is just how it is kind of thing. But it makes sense to me, Degenhart, that part of the fool's human heritage inherited some sort of predilection towards this magic.
Yeah.
And the silver just kind of enhances it. That's what makes sense to me in my mind.
Yes. Also,
won't abide by the Verity slander.
yes, sorry for Verity slander on Maine. I'll go back to my secret accounts for that. Just kidding. But no, very funny. So thank you, Degenhart, for writing in. And excitingly, we had Joseph write in about the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it really matches up and helps maybe explain what charms and wittedness and all that has to do with the hand wavy parts.
Right, yeah.
So
Joseph is talking about how they don't think Fitz reacted to the sketches, first of all. That's the first part about this, because
yes.
Fitz thinks he's reacting to the sketches. We talked about how weird that is. It's like written in the book that he's looking at these weird sketches and being weirded out by them.
Yeah, and we had talked about how it's weird because why would it work on paper and not be part of the charms? That doesn't make sense.
However, big capital spoilers here, so thank you for that, Joseph, is that the fool reassembles or has a charm against predators later on that helps them against the piebalds. And I had forgotten that. So obviously he had bought one of those charms and probably disassembled it. But being as aware of magic as he was able to keep the magic in the beads and reassemble it later on.
And not only being aware of magic, but also being a craftsman himself.
Yes.
Right? So that also gives you the ability to take things apart carefully and not destroy whatever was giving them the power to begin with.
And therefore that's kind of repulsed Fitz but locked him in place. And that kind of did it was kind of like the same thing in his hut, in his cottage. When Jenna revealed it, they backed up, but when he felt the wall against him, he couldn't move anywhere after that and was just staring at the charm. So
right.
It's kind of similar. He didn't have as strong of a reaction.
But it makes sense.
If it was disassembled.
Yeah, with it being disassembled, that parts of it are giving him something to react to, but not as strongly, but still strong enough to keep him in place and sort of wary about looking around.
And Joseph says, as to their contradicting words, I think the fool simply didn't understand how it worked and made a wrong assumption. So that kind of... obviously, like, the fool doesn't know the magic, so maybe they're just guessing on some of the things that they're saying out loud, and it doesn't quite work that way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Beloved is, again,
fallible.
Flawed, so does not know everything and could just be making guesses.
Really interesting theory. I do like that a lot, Joseph, so thank you for that one.
Yes. Also, Joseph talks about how one other thing they forgot to mention from before, that the epigraph to chapter 10 is about legends of protectors who will rise to the defense of a nation in times of great need. If we connect that to the chapter that follows, it seems to be a subtle hint by Rob and Hobb that Fitz is the real legendary protector who actually does the deeds legends are made of. And I thought that was a really good call out, especially because we
Right.
just this episode had a conversation about how the epigraphs sometimes are used as foreshadowing more so to do with anything
Yeah.
the chapter is talking about.
Mhm.
And I really do like the idea that Hobb is writing Fitz as that legendary hero. And I think we sometimes forget, or maybe it's just a me thing, but sometimes I forget that Fitz is sort of amazing and this really cool hero
Yeah.
because we are in his mind and he hates it so much and he's so depressed. And whenever you think legendary hero, you think this perfect human being who is perfect in every way, no flaws. But we have such a flawed character we're following
And
who
we've
is the hero.
We've said it about Verity too. We know he was flawed.
Yeah.
But looking at it from the outside, Verity could be perceived as the hero and like focus the books on him instead.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, the Fitz as the legendary hero to return is kind of also a running theme because we also had that other epigraph talking about the cult of the bastard and how they had stories of the true-hearted bastard coming to help the kingdom again. So very, very interesting thoughts there. Thank you very much, Joseph. Our last email was from Simon. Thank you very much for writing in. It is quite long and there's a lot of interesting topics in here. And some of it, again, is on charms and things like that. But first off, we want to talk about the discussion we had on the fool being a little bit of a hypocrite.
Yes.
And Simon really enjoyed our conversation about that, of how, yeah, the fool was able to snoop through all of Fitz's stuff, but he's so kind of like closed off and private and like, don't go in my room. And Simon really enjoyed that conversation, but thinks that the fool is very aware of those boundaries. However, there are different boundaries per person. Like, not all boundaries are the same. And that's a very good point to make. And the fool's boundaries are around his personal objects, right? And Fitz's boundaries are more so on his person, not his physical objects.
Yes. And I think this is a great point to bring up. So thank you, Simon, that Fool is very respectful of Fitz's boundaries. And we did see Fool be hypocritical and kind of rude to Beloved when he did cross those boundaries, when touching him with his fingertips to save him when he was in Night Eyes' body to save Night Eyes.
Yeah, the fool was very apologetic and guilty about that.
Right.
And we discussed that as like I didn't want to bring you into this world to, you know, like your addiction again, sort of thing. Didn't want to renew this connection if you didn't want it. And that is a part of that conversation. We just ignored that part.
Yeah. And so I think it's really good to bring that back up, to point it out as that's actually Fool recognizing that they've crossed a boundary and being apologetic in the same way that Fitz acknowledges that Fool's boundary is not being snooped on and he messed up by going in the room.
And Simon does, as an aside here, says, which is one reason why I think you're harsh on Fitz in some aspects of his parenting of B. And we always talk about that, like, actually, we're harsh on Fitz and he does a decent job with Hap, but with B, it's awful, you know?
Yes.
We talk about that a lot. And I haven't read the final trilogy for a while, but that's just kind of my impression I had. And Simon says that Fitz recognizes that B has a boundary with being touched by Fitz. And Fitz listens to that boundary and that consent and does not touch him, even though Molly's like, you have to touch your daughter, and everyone's else like, you can't not touch your daughter. He's listening to his child, which is good of him.
Yes. And I definitely did forget that B does have that really strong negative reaction to being touched by Fitz.
Because he doesn't have his walls up.
Right. It's fully the wall
like,
problem.
It's still on Fitz not recognizing what it is, but that's hard to recognize. Yeah,
definitely. And so I think that's really interesting to put it that way. I do think that's not the only problem with Fitz's parenting, but we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah. But it's a good point to this conversation, that he is respectful of what he knows to be people's boundaries.
Right. And I think that's really important too, to have all these characters that are so respectful in that way, right? That these characters who love each other do try to respect each other's boundaries and do whenever they have to, or out of necessity or just a door being open and
Right.
being drawn in by a charm.
Mm-hmm.
They do apologize and they do sort of understand that they've done wrong, even if they personally don't share the same boundary.
Yeah.
Because it's that love of somebody to respect their wants and needs and want to make them feel like safe in the relationship. And so that is a good point.
Simon continues to go on and relates this to his discussion about magic and hedge magic in particular, speaking on how these boundaries are often important and thematic in Robin Hobb's work, and how Simon keeps going back to Verity's words of being open is just not being closed. So that's relating to boundaries of like, okay, you just have to be willing
With the skill.
you know,
Yeah.
with the skill. Yeah, with the skill, but like Simon is relating it to all the magics, right?
Yes.
How you kind of have to buy into the magic if you have the predilection for it and the training for it and everything like that. But you still have to have that attitude of like, okay, I'm ready to do it. I'm into it. We're doing it now, not shying away from it and being closed to it. You have to open up those boundaries a little bit and be like, okay, I'm ready
Yeah.
for it to like fully work.
Simon says, when it comes to communications with dragons, it's pretty easy to see the characters who would never be able to hear them in the Hest model, those who would change and learn to hear them as they become less closed off, the Cedric model, and those who hear them from the start, the Elise model. I don't want to be mean to the poor woman, but Jenna's sister does sound pretty worked up from the little we hear of her, where Jenna is always described as being open and warm and so on. Charms must be capable of affecting everyone, otherwise there'd be no point in them. Or the ones that are targeted at everyone anyway. Most of the ones we hear about are targeted, so maybe the fool's experiment was focused on intruders or something. But Jenna describes a specific interest in understanding how they work, which might be at least partly inherited trait, but is maybe also to do with the personality and that openness that matters a lot in Hobb's world. I think in the first trilogy, Fitz talks about that as being a true distinction between witted and unwitted people. And of course, that's what the skill training starts off as entirely focused on.
Yeah, being open.
Being open. In the same sort of way, Fitz is the only one who has a real issue with skill, and I think that's partly obviously trauma, but because he just doesn't really like it. He's far more at home in his body than his mind, which is one of the reasons he thinks that Molly relationship works. So he likes his wit and the connection that it gives him to his own body and the physical world, and he doesn't like the sort of metaphysical exploration of the skill as much and doesn't respect it as magic. He wants everyone to be more like witted people and would be happy for the skill to vanish. It can't be a coincidence that he's really proficient in the one and less so in the other, despite having strong natural aptitude for it. So the theory is that magic is partly natural proficiency, those genes you discussed, partly individual interests. Chade talks about scrying when he was desperate for another life and a companionship, and partly training on technical skills. If Beloved is really open to it and is doing the technical learning, maybe he'd only need the tiniest natural ability to make the charms.
Yeah, which is really, really interesting in a cool kind of thought process and linking a couple of the different conversations we've had.
Yeah. And so I think I do really like that idea that you aren't just born into greatness.
Right.
You just have to want it bad enough, I guess,
Well,
and to simple it down a lot.
And greatness in this is magic, but you have to be born into it. You have to be told how to be great, but then want it afterwards as well to be truly great. Otherwise, you could just dabble a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think that is an interesting take. I also really love the idea that the reason Fitz struggles with skill is because of that mind aspect versus body.
And you can really dive into that too, because Fitz's mind is, he has so many secrets, right?
Yeah.
He has so closed off in his mind. It's been invaded multiple times by the coterie. Galen told him to off himself and that he's not going to amount to anything as a skill kind of command we've kind of theorized.
Right.
There's a lot of things that in his mind he doesn't want to explore, memories he doesn't want to go back to, things he wants closed off.
Right. And to be fair, I mean, whenever he is skilling, he does feel that vulnerability, that people can see his inner thoughts, that people
Right.
can get into his mind and learn his secrets. And with the wit, there isn't ever that concern because you're still yourself. It's not about others gaining access to you. It's about gaining access to the oneness of the world, I guess.
Right,
And so it's
yeah.
less of a,
He's not feeling alone anymore.
yeah, I don't know. So I just really like, in general, that line of thinking of maybe it is sort of something that you have to be open enough to have. You have to be
Right.
open to the ideas to be able to use it in any capacity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, thank you very much, Simon. And the last thing that Simon has in this email is that he really agrees with Emma's theory about all of the peepholes, how they were built into the guard room, specifically to look at Fitz and watch over Fitz. Because he reminds us that the Red Ship War early on was kind of seen just as escalated raiding. It wasn't an existential crisis, it was just raids. And that was probably, we kind of loosely lined up the timeline. The pantry was probably being expanded and the peepholes were kind of added in during early parts of that during Fitz's childhood. So it wasn't really a desperate, we need to know what the armed men are thinking. Simon really appreciates that line of thought that Shrewd would want an eye on Fitz, that he could see when he wasn't in the Queen's Garden learning the skill, because Chade can't go up to the Queen's Garden and see anything there.
Yeah.
So a little bit extra kind of view on how
maybe it
the
was
boy is doing.
Yeah. It was more about Fitz than we know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Simon. And thank you to everyone who wrote in. It's always nice to hear from you guys. We love hearing your points of view. I feel like all of our listeners are so smart and intelligent, and I love talking with you through this medium. So thank you for bringing your ideas, and we cannot wait to see what you have to say next week.